meeting of the town of Durham. I'd like to call the meeting to order and get things going. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see everybody. This is our chance to kind of break out during mud season and do something in town. I'd like to let you know that I'm the moderator. I'm Bill Schneider. It's my pleasure to be moderator here. I've been sworn in. I'd like to have the select board and the budget committee introduce themselves if they would.
My name is Durham. I'm the chair of the select board.
John Michael, the vice chair.
Good morning, developer. I'm Heather Ryan.
I'm Milton Simon, I live on the Stackpole Road.
Mike's not working.
Yeah, I think it was on. I am Milton Simon, I live on the Stackpole Road.
Joe Gascoigne, vice chair. Jane Harris, Bodie Hill.
Alan Harrington, Day Road.
John Sherrick, Westwood Road. Phyllis Brandon, Hillside Drive.
John Talbot, Stackpole Road.
Parker, Stackpole Road.
Neil Berry, Stackpole Road.
Thank you very much. I would propose that we use the main moderator's manual as a guide for the procedure for this meeting. Does anybody object? Terrific. I'll do that. Next, I'd like to announce the election results from yesterday's election. For Budget Committee, we had 3 seats open for 3-year terms, and the winners were Jill Gascoigne, John Talbot, and Jeffrey Wakeman. For RSU 5 Board of Directors, a 3-year term, the winner was Michelle Richardson. For RSU 5 Board of Directors, a 2-year term was Stephanie Worth. For Select Board, 3-year terms were Joshua Klein Golden and Rebecca Polster. And there was a survey question on the ballot with respect to the bandstand. And the survey results were yes, 118 votes, which is 67%, and no, 59 votes, which is 33%. So the survey question was answered in the affirmative. Next, I'd like to recognize the town fire chief, Chief Tripp.
For the fire department, color guard, please post the colors.
Color guard. Again. Ready. Arm. Go. Arm. Prepare to carry color. Carry color. Good. Forward march. Color guard. Up. Right face. Present arm. Prepare to present color. Present color.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prepare to post color. Colors ready. Post color. At ease. Shoulder out. Left face. Good. Forward march.
Thank you very much to the fire department for posting the colors and for the chief of police and pledge allegiance. The next order of business is a scholarship presentation by Joe Roy, the chairman of the select.
Morning, everyone. We're just going to take a moment to recognize the year's recipient of our scholarship. And this year, our recipient, after a really close review of all the applicants and a really tight competition, is Isabella George. And so we've got Isabella come up and so Isabella has a very impressive resume already before even getting to college. She is a leader in school. She's been part of student leadership at Newport High School since 2022. She's a junior volunteer at the Central Meeting Center in the summer of 2023 and the summer of 2024. She had an internship at the Institute at Massachusetts Institute of Technology Center of Constructive Communication in the summer of 2023 and 2024. And she worked with researchers and students from other schools to test and design a social dialogue app that they use in high school. She was a student member of the RSU5 Strategic Planning Committee from fall of 2024 to now, a student advisory leader at the Freeport High School from 2022 to present, a student mentor at the Freeport High School from 2023 to present, a Spanish tutor at the Freeport High School from 2022 to now. She's been on honor roll all through high school, including high honors in 2021 through 2022, 2022 through 2023. She's the Main Smith Book Award recipient in 2023 through 2024 from Smith College. She has an award of excellence in Spanish from 2023 to 2024. Now on to the second page back to us. 10th grade Life Science Excellence Award, 11th grade Life Science Excellence Award, a varsity softball player since 2021, and been a member of the All-Maine Honorable Mention Conference and the All-Conference second team softball. And she's got a full list of colleges that she's already been accepted to, and she hasn't quite decided yet, but it sounds like we're leaning maybe towards Stonehill College and majoring in the really easy topic of neuroscience, and also a minor in Spanish. And she's also accepted at Bates College, University of New Hampshire, Binghamton University, College of Holy Cross, Wheaton College, and waiting to hear back on others. So, really awesome resume. We're really happy to give her this award for her scholarship. Alrighty, now we're just going to hop right now into our presentation to begin the year, or to begin the town meeting. Alrighty, so first off, thank you all for being here today. I think what you'll see here is there's a lot of folks up here who put a lot of work into making today happen, a lot of prep going into everything you're going to see on the screen here, and we're looking forward to having some really respectful and good conversations about this as we make a decision for what the next 18 months is going to look like here in Durham. So first thing I want to cover is everyone should get something in the mail about fiscal year change. And we're going to be going over into an 18-month budget this year to get from onto a fiscal year that better matches the county tax and the school budget cycle as well. And so it's going to be a little bit different than in the past, where we've had a 12-month budget. This year we're having an 18-month budget. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk a little bit about everything we're going to cover today. One thing I want to point out is something we might hear a lot, a word we might hear a lot today is annualized. And so when we're looking at these budget numbers, we try to take it, it's really hard to make apples to apples because we're looking at an 18-month budget this cycle as opposed to a 12-month budget. And in an effort to help correct for that, and so we understand what we're looking at as a year-to-year change, we annualize these budget numbers. And when you're analyzing budget numbers, what you're really looking at is what is the percent change representative of 12 months compared to the previous 12 months. Now, some of our budget items are billed to us multiple times in an 18-month period. Other of our budget items are only billed once in an 18-month period. And so we've tried to adjust for that, as well as for any increase or decrease in the number that we're spending. And so we can talk about all these items and clarify and if there's any questions when we get to an item, whether this is something that's billed monthly, something that's billed once during the 18-month period, something that's billed twice. We've gone through and we've made those adjustments. So when we look at the percent change, it gives you an idea of what the actual percent change is compared to a normal 12-month budget cycle, even though a lot of these numbers will be higher because we're using an 18-month budget now. So, what we're going to talk about today is all of the aspects of our municipal budget, but we have to remember that our municipal budget is just our municipal budget. That doesn't include the RSU assessment or county tax or any overlay we end up putting on at the time of commitment. And so, really, this is a vote just on our municipal spending. This is a snapshot of the proposed budget for the next 18 months. As you can see, these are those annualized numbers where we talked about the changes over here. And you'll see that there's some changes are a higher percentage, others might be a lower percentage, a negative percentage. Things like debt services, where we have some debts that are paid twice during this 18-month period, others that might only be paid, a portion of them might only be paid once. And you'll see our total appropriations for our municipal budget on a 18-month basis is $6,481,500, which is representative of a decrease of 5.4% just of the municipal budget if we annualize it, taking into consideration, like I said, some things are being paid once, some things are being paid twice, some things might be paid 18 times, once each month. And you'll see here, we also have our tax levy, our revenues. We've projected our revenues for the next 18 months. You can see it's not much of a change of 0.4%. But you'll also see our municipal tax levy, we are down to annualized at negative 5.6%. As you can see here, again, our annualized numbers for our municipal operations. And then we'll kind of look at what we have estimated for the cost for education over the next 18 months, which you'll see is up 9.7%. You'll see here that our county tax, it says it's down minus 26.7%, but that is something that we're only paying once in this next 18-month cycle. And you'll see that the select board budget has a total increase of 3.5%. And I just want to make it clear, our municipal budget is down 5.4%. But when we accommodate for the increases in the education, the school budget, and with the increases in county tax, that represents a 3.5% change after we've calculated all of that and included our estimated revenues and our use of fund balance. So the 3.5 is a percent change of the entirety of everything, whereas when we go back here, the actual municipal budget is down 5.4% annualized. And so what we want to show here too is just how things are looking for where your tax dollars go. So as you can see, the vast majority of our tax dollars go to the school district, which is about 73% of your tax bill in fiscal year 2024. 18% goes to the municipality and 9% goes to county tax. And as we come into this next 18-month budget cycle that we have budgeted out and projected, you'll see that our education is 78% of our tax bill, and our municipal tax is now down to 16% of our tax bill, and county tax down to 6%. So what we're talking about today is this 16%. And so when you think about it as a dollar amount, we have 77.5% going towards education. So for every dollar of your taxes that's collected, 77 or 78 cents is going to school, 16 cents is going to the town, and 6 cents is going to your county tax. going to talk a little bit more about the general fund balance today, and so we've had a lot of discussions over the last year or so about the use of fund balance and preparing for future capital expenses. And as you can see here, we have a fund balance that's roughly $3.3 million. These are funds that aren't designated towards any sort of budget item and can be utilized for the town to pay for capital, invest in future capital expenditures, or just budget for other uses in town. When you're looking at your fund balance, you really want to see that fund balance be at an amount that's about 15 to 25% of your annual expenses. And so in the town of Durham, that would put our fund balance goal of $1.65 million and 2.7 to 2.75 million. And right now we're at 3.3 million. And the reason we want to spend down that fund balance is because that's made up of dollars that we've already collected from the taxpayers. And so when we're going through a budgeting process and coming up with our needs for expenses, we want to make sure that we are utilizing the money that we've already collected before we start raising and appropriating additional funds. And so we've got a plan here over for the next 10 years that we developed starting last year to help keep our fund balance in this target range. So as you can see, our fund balance in FY22 was right around 3.5 million. It went up in FY23. We started to use some of the fund balance here in FY24, and we're paying it down. Through FY26, we're now paying the fund balance down a little bit more, getting it into the upper end of that target range, which is highlighted in yellow right here. And then in 2027, this is where we project the fund balance will be sitting as we begin the budget process. So what you can see here is that our fund balance is healthy, and it's right within the range that we're ready to see. And the budget we're going to be voting on today is reflective of some use of fund balance to help spend that fund balance down and plan for future capital. This is our long-term debt, and you can see here that our debt is slowly being paid off with a lot of things coming off in FY 2029 and FY 30. Our debt, to give you a rough idea, this current debt that we have right now, it's about $106,000 annually in interest. And so our use of fund balance that we're going to talk about today is really to help offset, prevent us needing to borrow additional funds in the future so we can avoid having to borrow and then pay interest. As we talked a little bit about the fund balance that's helped go towards some of our capital, one thing we've also done now for the last 2 years is have a long-term capital plan. And so this is a plan where each department has come forward with their capital needs over the next 10 years. When I'm talking about capital needs, we're talking about things like vehicle needs or equipment or things like that. They're usually quite expensive and are going to be something that we need. And our department heads have done a really good job of going through and looking at the rate that most things, how long those things can last. You know, Calvin knows how long he can expect permission to get out of the plow truck so we can estimate when we're going to need another resource like that. Or Chief knows how long we can expect to get out of one of the fire apparatuses, and we know when you might need to have a replacement schedule built in for that. And so rather than being reactive and coming to you all in the beginning of a budget cycle and saying, oh, we need this year, we're trying to be proactive and saying, let's maintain a good, healthy capital reserve that we're planning for future capital expenditures so we don't have to see a big increase when we go to purchase a piece of equipment because we've funded it slowly throughout the 10-year process. What you'll see here with these numbers is this is the annual allocation to the each one of these long-term capital planning accounts. So we're annually putting $10,000 into the municipal building capital reserve, annually putting $205,000 into public works, and annually putting $180,000 into fire and rescue. On the budget we're looking at today, we are looking at 1.5 years worth of investment into these capital reserve accounts. So these numbers on the sheets that you've seen for the budget sheet will be 1.5 times the amount that we are using on an annual basis. So we have our annual needs, and we're just budgeting to put 1.5 years worth of those needs into the budget this year. This is a kind of a graph here that we're going to go through for each one of these capital reserve plans and accounts and show you what the schedule is. So the white line, which you see right here, is a flat level of funding of what we're scheduled to raise annually. Whereas this blue line is the expenditures out of those some years where there's no anticipated expenditure out of capital reserve accounts, and then other years where there's a lot of expenditure expected. And by maintaining this nice level funded line of inputs into those capital reserve accounts, we can help stabilize tax bills and not have to react to those needs as they come up, and we're preparing for them. And just to give you a report here of what was used out of these capital accounts this year, in 2024, some of the funds were used to help purchase an office generator. We were able to get some grant funding to offset a large portion of that office generator, but the majority of the rest of the office generator was paid for out of these capital reserve funds. And you can see here, plan for 2026, some outlays for the town office, septic system repairs and upgrades, and a fire station boiler. And so shows the really great flexibility we have with these accounts and these reserves, because we don't need to raise or appropriate additionally, because we've been putting away for these expected expenses in the future. Public Works, this is the same idea. You will see that we have a flat level funding of this capital reserve at $205,000 annually planned for the next 10 years. No expenses, for example, no expenses planned in 2028, but as you see other expenses pop up and things on the replacement schedule, that number will increase. But again, we've had this flat level funded capital reserve account that will help offset that expense. In 2024, there was no capital expenditures out of the Public Works Reserve, and in 2026, for this 18-month budget period, things that are being planned are a pickup truck, a loader, and a flatbed. And those are things that, if we get throughout this cycle and find that we need to replace those, we have that schedule. Now, just because something is on the replacement schedule does not guarantee that it's going to be expended out of capital. Our department heads do a really good job of getting the full usable life out of their equipment, and they now, with this new system, don't have to come and ask for a piece of equipment at the beginning of the budget cycle with the expectation that they're going to need to replace it. If it breaks, now we're in a situation where they can say, we think we're going to need this in this year, but we were actually able to refurbish it, or we were able to maintain it in a way that we can get another year out of it before needing to replace it. And so what you see as a planned expense doesn't necessarily mean every one of those expenses is slated to come out of capital reserves in the next few 18 months, but it gives us that flexibility. Same deal with the fire rescue reserve. You can see we have this nice level flat funding, and we have peaks and valleys of expected capital expenditures out of that. In 2024, we had no purchases out of capital expenditures for the fire department, and in 2026, we have plans for a computer-aided dispatch of equipment. So. Other town reserves we have are our reevaluation reserve. As we know that we're in the process of waiting for our town reevaluation to start in the future. It won't be starting during this budget cycle, but we had put money aside each year for the last couple of years to prepare for that expense, and that has a balance of $220,000. We have a contingency balance reserve, and this is used for unplanned expenses and allows the town to be more flexible to respond to unexpected events, and that has a balance of $16,953. We have a grant matching reserve, which has a balance of $26,848, and this is used to help us apply for grants and expend grants that require town matching funds. So oftentimes when you receive a new grant, you will have to have some contributing funds to that grant that are matched by the grant agency. And this is what we have that money set aside. So if grant opportunities come up, we have some cash on hand to pursue those and get those matching funds. A lot of times those returns might be a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. So we want to make sure that when we have those opportunities arise, we can bring those grant dollars back into our community and we have those funds available. And we have money set aside for the used to pay for the restoration of the Union Church. And that's currently a balance of $6,423. The other thing we're going to talk about today is 3 land use ordinance amendments. And I will just go over them really briefly right here, but I want everyone to know before we vote on any of these, our town planner will be giving a presentation on each one, and then we'll go into the discussion and the vote on that article, and then he will give a presentation on the next one. And so things that we're going to be voting on here are boundary adjustments in Article 19 to boundary adjustments that are based off of some new data we've received from Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and some new evaluations we have on the land in Durham. This is going to remove about 1,500, is proposed to remove about 1,500 acres of resource protection that was added in 2023 because some resources that were thought to have been on the property have now been reevaluated, and we've seen that there's been a change and that those resources aren't of a concern anymore. And this facilitates a process that will allow our private property owners who are now in resource protection to have a buffer around their properties to allow them for expansion and development without having to go through an onerous process of permitting. We're also going to talk about contract zoning for large energy systems in Article 20. As most of you are aware, we are currently in a moratorium on battery energy storage systems, and this Article 20 is to adopt battery energy storage systems regulations and provide the town with a permitting authority to review and reject projects or approve projects based off of the quality of the project. George is going to have a little bit more of a presentation on this, but for the United States, if our moratorium were to expire, we don't have the authority or the ability to reject projects cited as long as it meets minimum standards. And this is set up in place to help us have those sorts of tools to give the community that opportunity to reject projects or review projects in a way that we haven't had before. And then we also have some proposed changes in Article 21 on the historic preservation process and standards as an effort to follow up on the town's comprehensive plan and recommendations out of that and bring our standards, revise our standards to meet the federal and state requirements and shift our focus from districts to individual historic properties and streamline our system to a new due process and property rights for our landowners who own those historic properties. So like I said, all of this stuff will be covered by presentations by our town planner. We've had a lot of town meetings on, our town events on this already. We've had public hearings, we've had information sessions, and everything here has been available online. But again, right before we vote on or discuss either one of these, our town planner will give a short presentation on each item. I just want to say thank you all for being here and participating today. I know it's a Saturday, I know it's the beginning of spring, but this is a really important process for our community. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedule to be here and contributing to our community and bring all of your expertise and experience living in the town of Durham and all of your perspective for us all to hear and learn from. So without further ado, we'll begin the rest of the meeting, but this is our beginning presentation. We need to get an actual photo of the board presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, for that presentation. It was very useful and informative. Okay, I'd like to lay out some rules for the debate today, just kind of to help keep things moving along and help keep things civil and friendly. Only one person at a time will be allowed to speak. I'll recognize you if you come to the mic, and I'll ask you to speak. I'll ask you to introduce yourself and tell us where you live. You should speak to me, not to the select people or not to the board of the budget committee. Speak to me, and I will relay things to the audience as necessary. Ask questions of me. If you have a question for the chairman of the select board, tell me that question, and I'll relay it to the chairman of the select board. That'll help keep things moving along. I'll try to find somebody to answer any other questions that you might have. Please keep your remarks brief and to the point. That's required in the moderator's manual, so just stay to the topic. Don't wander around too much. There are 31 articles today. And please remember that we're all neighbors here. We're here because we love Durham. and care about Durham. And the meeting will be best if everybody is kind and orderly and friendly, and I think we're gonna have a fine time. We'll work our way through the war. I'd like to mention also that if anybody gets hungry, I understand there are some real nice goodies for sale out in the hallway. So I would encourage you to go satisfy your hunger there. So we'll start with the business of the meeting. Article 3 is to see if the town will allow non-residents who have information pertaining to any following articles to speak when recognized. And I've been notified that the following non-residents may have information that we'd like to hear. Jerry Douglas, the town manager, Calvin Beaumier, the road commissioner, Robert Tripp, the fire chief, George DeBarge, the town planner, and Mark Roy, the town accountant. Would somebody like to make a motion on this article?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we allow these non-residents to speak. If you would take out your green card, and if you agree, please hold it up in the air. Terrific. If you don't agree, please hold it up in the air. Thank you. Motion, Article 3 passes. Article 4 is to see if the town of Durham will vote to raise an appropriated amount not to exceed 1.5 times the 2024 Durham municipal budget for any budget articles not approved in this warrant. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And before we go any further, Article 4 has been moved and seconded. I just want to mention that we're working off the warrant that was handed out at the door. The one in the town report is a little bit different. So the warrant that we're working from today is the one that was handed out. So Article 4 has been moved and seconded to see if the town of Durham will vote to raise the appropriate amount not to exceed 1.5 times the 2024 Durham municipal budget for any budget articles not approved in this form. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your green cards. All opposed, please raise your green cards. Article 4 passes. Moving on to Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,143,060 for general government. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the town votes to raise and appropriate $1,143,060 for general government. Is there discussion? I'll recognize Mr. Simon.
Good morning. So the Budget Committee certainly understands that some budget increases are unavoidable, such as the increased costs in healthcare coverage, the increases in costs of doing day-to-day business. However, considering the many uncertainties that we are now all facing, such as weekly rises in food prices and the anticipation of many more retail price increases, thanks to the wide-ranging tariffs that went into place this week, the uncertainties associated with the town's upcoming revaluation, along with the confusion that comes with undertaking an 18-month budget, the majority of Budget Committee members felt this year was not the time for the town to be taking on such new spending as $20,000 for an outside human resource specialist, raising our legal budget to $15,000 a year in order to put the town's lawyer on a retainer, when the fact is our cost for legal services for the past 3 years was only $8,505 in 2024, $3,088 in 2023, and $2,992 in 2022. In addition, the majority of the Budget Committee is opposed to a 2-year contract for an $8,000 texting service to provide notifications about meetings and community events when the town already has the capability of doing email blasts. So the need for a texting service is redundant and the cost is unnecessary. In addition, a majority of the Budget Committee is opposed to the 6.4% salary increase given to the town manager this past fall, especially considering that this same position was given a 13.4% increase just 1 year ago. Lastly, the majority of the Budget Committee is opposed to pay increases of 4% and higher and a general municipal tax increase of 3.5% as proposed by the Select Board, considering this year's Social Security cost of living increase was just 2.5% and is projected to be even lower next year at around 2.2 to 2.3%. And the fact that just this last week, our own state government approved the new budget, which included a mere 1.9% cost of living pay increase. Should the town vote the motion down and vote in favor of the Budget Committee recommendation for this article, the result will be a 2.9% increase in next year's property tax levy and mill rate instead of the 3.5% increase proposed by the Select Board, which will actually be, I believe, around 4.6% increase if the current proposed school budget is approved. On behalf of the Budget Committee, I urge you to vote down this current motion in favor of the Budget Committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Alan Carrington. I live on Bay Road. The concern I have is with homestead exemption, which relates specifically to assessing on this particular article. All of our bills that we receive every year, we have an exemption, which that exemption actually reduces our taxes. And that exemption this past year was 66%. In other words, there was 33% that we were not able to take advantage of by reducing our taxes. My taxes last year, just because of that, were up $175. My question is, you can relate it to whomever you want as you requested. I understand that when we are not able to, we being the town of Durham residents, are not able to take advantage of a $25,000 exemption when our valuation meets the market value of housing. My question is how did we get into this position to begin with? And what are we doing policy-wise to make sure we don't get into this position again so that we can take full advantage of the total $25,000 exemption?
Is there something you can answer? Yes.
Yeah, so, in terms of what we can do to address that concern, the Select Board's already initiated the property reevaluation process, which will take place in 2027. Unfortunately, there's only a handful of companies in the region that do property reevaluation, and we put a request for proposals out. We received a few proposals. The soonest any of them could start was in 2027. And so once the reevaluation process goes down, you get more in line with the state's requirements, and then you can see that full percentage of your homestead exemption being available to the taxpayers and the property owners in town. I can't speak for the actions of the previous select boards or previous management of the town prior to our involvement, but when we began, most of us are relatively new, when we began on the select board, we identified that as a concern and went to address it, and this is the length of time it takes to get those concerns addressed due to just how few people do this reevaluation process. And so I don't know why the reevaluation wasn't done sooner, but we're trying to do it as soon as we possibly can.
Yes, please.
I'd just like to add to that. We had it on in previous years where they were going to do a full reval. They were going to do, I don't know what the term is versus a full. Anyways. And then Jerry looked at that situation, our town manager and the town assessor, and said that at that point it had gone too long, and that's why we need to do a full reval at this point in order to be able to claim the full homestead exemption. And so I just want to reiterate that there was a plan. It was sort of a halfway plan to get us up at a higher value, but now since it's been so long, a full reval is necessary. And then that would bring us to the full amount that we can claim for the homestead.
I understand what your proposal is for the next couple of years and having that rebuild done. But my other question over and above that would be, what will we have policy-wise in place so that we do not get into this position, say, 5 years down the road, so that we stay at that highest market value as we possibly can?
Yes, please.
I can't speak for what will be voted on by policy by future iterations of this board, but I would intend that we would, my assumption is that when we work with the reevaluation company in 2027, we discuss with them and our town assessor as to what a more appropriate schedule is, and then could develop a plan to start setting money aside and scheduling in advance, more in advance, the future reevaluations to make sure that we don't get into this situation. This is a situation that's happened to a lot of municipalities. You may have heard some of this on the news where folks went a really long time without a reevaluation, and then they had this exact problem. And so our goal in the future would be to develop a policy that's more proactive rather than reactive, which is the situation we find ourselves in right now.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, though.
Yes, Mr. Barry.
Neil Berry, Stackpole Road. So a couple things on the general budget information. If you're like me, and I think you guys have this in front of your town report, and you look at general government spending and public safety and public works, they're all up. And I recently asked, how can the budget go down and spending go up? Because make no mistake about it, spending is going up in this town a lot. The budget went down because there was at least $230,000 of spending last year for capital plot stuff that didn't get done this year. Like we put $160,000 aside for the revaluation fund, and there was another 60 or 70,000. I can tell you what it is if you want to hear it. That didn't get transferred this year to the budget. Plus the way things are paid, one time this year or 2 times this year affected the total budget. So spending is going up. The budget's not going down. Spending is going up. And it wasn't real clear to me, but the budget committee offered an alternative budget, and it was it 1065?
Yes, $1,065,375.
So my question to the moderator is, can I amend this motion? Do we have to vote the motion? And
You can move to amend it, and if there's a second, we'll deal with the amendment.
okay, so I move that we amend this motion to the budget committee's recommendation of $1 million. This is in the general government line only, $1,065,375.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend this article to substitute the number $1,065,375 as the amount to be raised and appropriate. Is there discussion? Yes.
Rob Tripp, your fire chief. But because the budget committee chair mentioned pay raises for the employees in that budget speech, I'm going to take it upon myself to speak for the 11 town employees full-time. One of them, the town manager, is under a contract with his 5 bosses, so that's between them. I'm not worried about that. I believe he mentioned 2.5% for Social Security. As you know, the town employees are not under Social Security, do not pay into Social Security, have nothing to do with Social Security. It's really a viewpoint. In 2023, you can Google this, Social Security actually gave out 8.7% because of the inflation rate. I didn't see a single budget member vote for an 8.7% increase for the town employees. Nobody even suggested it. So it's great. I call it stackpole math is what I call it. When they can find the low number and throw it out there. The town's healthcare costs went up 9%, but that also includes the town employees' healthcare costs went up 9% out of their own pocket. So the town has offered a 3.5% COLA, a cost of living adjustment. That's not a pay raise, that's actually going backwards to keep the employees current with the cost of living adjustment, again, not a raise. Going forward, that's over 18 months for the town employees. This is an 18-month budget, no raise, just adjustment for the last year. I suggest, just as the fire chief, that we keep the town municipal budget the same, and we do not try to save money off the back of the employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Sure.
Joe Roy, Brook Road. I appreciate everyone's comments so far. A couple of things I want to point out, and I think that the fire chief just made some of the points that I wanted to address. It is not a 4% increase in employee compensation in the town of Durham. It's a 3.5% cost of living adjustment. And currently, there's a new piece of legislation that went into enact at the state level that requires family leave to be funded by the state employee, the workers at 0.5% of their wages, and the municipality or the business has to provide 0.5% of their wages as well. We chose to adopt that 0.5% cost for the staff as well to mean that the town has a 1% adjustment. And in part, we feel that it's important to consider a 3.5% cost of living adjustment as being fair, because we are going into an 18-month budget period. And so generally after the 12-month budget, there would be an opportunity to reevaluate staff compensation, but we are not going to be doing that. So this is an 18-month adjustment, and we do not know what the cost of living will look like after this next 12-month period. Another thing I want to point out is that it's not a valid point to bring up the state's compensation and the state's cost of living adjustment, because state employees are on a payment schedule, and it's a payment chart that automatically increases. So while the cost of living for state staff, state employees might go up 1%, the step raises in between each one of their annual raises is 3 to 5%, depending on that. So that's not really a point that I want us to put much time considering. The consideration of the reevaluation as a reason to adjust the budget we have right now doesn't seem valid to me, because the reevaluation process will not start until 2027. In regards to compensation for a town manager, we did a market analysis to determine what the average compensation is for a town manager in the immediate towns to our community, as well as to the commuter towns to our community, and we found that even at this assessment, we are below what the market would provide to a town manager in adjacent communities. Additionally, our town manager holds far more responsibilities. Most of the town managers in the regional communities have assistant town managers, and they have other staff that are dedicated full-time to wearing the multiple hats that our town manager has. So we have a heck of a bargain with our town manager here. As Chief pointed out, health insurance premiums have increased 9%. We are having to adopt that. This budget also reflects that we have new cleaning services provided for our town because of the exiting of our previous cleaning contract. Those costs have gone up. And the number you see in front of you from the select board is really the cost of doing business for the next 1.5 years, and not a projected percentage change that was determined and proposed previously by the budget committee during our discussions. It's really important to us that we increase communication to our community. That is something we have heard is vital for people to get. Not everyone in our community utilizes email as their primary form of communication. And when the power is down, if you live in my household, you'll find that once you don't have your Wi-Fi connection, your internet doesn't work that well, and it's still important that we get messages out to our community. So we are utilizing this texting service, which is pretty standard for most municipalities. It gives people the opportunity to opt in to receive information and critical information, especially in the case of natural disasters or flooding or hazards or emergencies that might arise, that we want to make sure it's really important that members of the community get that sort of information. As the select board, one of the most important things for us to do and our town manager to do is mitigate risk. And when mitigating risk isn't a fun thing. you did your job well, because you have mitigated all these problems. And so, when you don't mitigate risk well and you get into serious issues, everyone knows you did a really poor job. And so two of the major risks when you're dealing with municipalities and employees in general are human resource services and legal services. And it is really important for us to be able to go through the process of updating our employee onboarding, our employee training, our tax, our wage tables, and all of these aspects to help make sure that we are in line with very complex human resource laws that are managed really just by specialists in that field. And the select board had asked the town manager to go get us a proposal for bringing a staff person on to do that, because we understand that that is a huge risk. Well, the town manager came back and said, you know, I think we can do this much cheaper by coming up with a contract service and using a consultant who can provide us these services as needed to help mitigate these really big risks. And I think we've probably all been able to quick Google search to see really easily all the nightmares that other municipalities and other businesses have gone through when they don't have proper HR services. So that's really important for us. As with regards to legal services, we felt like it was really important for our town to be better protected with all the resource protection changes we've had, the land use changes we've had, and the possibility of things like contract zoning being available in the future, and infrastructure projects coming along that require a really specialized municipal lawyer. We felt that it was really important that we utilize that lawyer to our full extent. And so with our lawyer recently retiring and hired new legal counsel, we've already used them quite a bit, both for training in-house to train staff on regulations that we need to be aware of, train the select board, and we have determined that based off of our anticipated use of that legal services over the next 18 months, it would be better to have them on retainer because we will be using them more, and that would be a cheaper option for us as opposed to utilizing them on an on-call basis, which is charged hourly and you can add up really quickly. We want to make sure that we have that lawyer available to help us. And so, kind of in conclusion, what I'll tell you is that the numbers you're seeing in front of you from the select board have gone through and painstakingly determined the cost at each budget line. And it's not a desire to just increase or decrease by a certain percentage. And I do want to say, no matter what other individuals have to say, the municipal budget has decreased. You just can't say that it's increased when it hasn't. The municipal budget percentage has decreased based off of the annualized rate that we've had in the past. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Jill.
Jill Stackpole, or Jill Gastonday, Stackpole Road. So moderator, I'm a little concerned and confused by that last statement, because according to the chart that was put up, the municipal budget went up 14%, and we were told those were annualized numbers. Last year, the municipal budget went up 9.7%. I made this comment last year, and I'm going to make it again this year. This was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to make sure at least some of the budget numbers weren't the same for the budget committee and the select board, because I think the town trusts us a lot, and they don't realize some things if we're all on the same page. We do have our fund balance, which is an ample amount of money right now, but that money is going to get down to our minimum, as the select board chair pointed out, in 2026 or 2027. And this is not Stackpole math. I confirmed this with our town accountant, that at that time, it is going to be money raised that needs to come up with the difference, unless the town in this short period of time raises enough in the way of permits and fees to cover that cost. My other concern is that there's been a large focus so far on employee wages. We, over the past few years, have been instructed that when we make changes to the budget, it is not line by line. That the select board and the department heads have the right to determine where that money is going to be spent and how it's going to be allocated. So to say that this decrease is automatically going to be a decrease in raises, I think is a scare tactic and not appropriate. Some of the ways money could be saved is they did develop the safety text messaging system. Unfortunately, I've seen no safety text out of it. What I have seen is letting me know when the town office is closed, last minute notifications of a town meeting, but when roads or when multiple cars and school buses were off the roads, no text messages were sent out. When Route 9 was closed over by 125, no text messages were sent out. When we were advised to avoid Pinkham Brook Road, no text messages were sent out. My other concern is that I wanted to raise communication because the select board is making a lot of decisions that are changes that affect our budget not just once, but year to year. And I just want to make sure everyone's aware and that they're on board with the select board's choices. We are currently already under a contract with a lawyer. That was a big financial budget change. We're already under contract with IT services. That was a big financial change. I'm not saying that they were unwarranted or they were warranted. I just want to make sure that the public is aware and is making an educated decision when they vote today. My other concern is that the request of hiring an HR consultant. A few years ago, the select board informed us that we needed a town manager because the select board could no longer handle the volume of HR concerns. Now we're being told that the town manager and select board cannot handle and we need an HR consultant.
Josh,
I just want to, Josh Kleingolden, Millbrook Road, I just want to do some different, the employee wages, I don't think it's a scare tactic. I think this budget last year was extremely close. We were within 1% of total budget. There was very little leeway if an unexpected expense came up. And I don't think it's a scare tactic to say that the first item that's going to be looked at and said we're not going to do this right now is the employee wages. One, the town voted on the town manager at one of these meetings a few years ago, and what he's not getting credit for is all the money he saved us, which has more than covered his salary for the past few years. He saved us money in moving the town's money around, collecting, I don't know, higher interest rates that were 50, 75, 100% higher than they had been in the past. Right? I mean, astronomically higher. He's found increases in workers' comp and has saved money there, gotten us money back. Increased grants. I know the fire chief just got a grant. We'll hear about it at the Tuesday meeting. These are all things that take time, take work, and so he has done a fantastic job. And it was the select board that, prior iteration, we weren't on the select board, that recommended it, and it was the town that voted on it because the need was there. One thing that we keep hearing about from the budget committee and other members of the community is what are we doing to collect the back taxes? That takes time, and one of the reasons that Jerry can't focus on that as much as he wants to, he has told us, is because there is so much HR work that is being done. So again, this expense that he's recommended is something that will hopefully make us more money or bring in more revenue for us in the future. And I just want to say, if we keep taking away things from these town employees, they're going to leave. As a state employee, I know I could go into private practice right now, do less work, and make 3 times the amount of money I'm doing right now. And we have 11 full-time employees. They are paid less than they would get paid, I think, any of the neighboring communities. They're here because they love this town like the rest of us. And if we lose them, I don't know if we can get somebody to come in and fill that position, and B, if we can, fill it at the same level that we see now. And so it's important to protect our employees. We need them so that we can keep going. So just thank you for the 11 plus of you and all the other employees out there.
Heather.
I just wanted to speak in numbers, because I know percentages and the way that some of the stuff is getting explained can kind of like go over my head a little bit sometimes. So I'm just gonna give you guys an example of, let's talk about the HR situation, just in like actual real numbers instead of percentages and stuff. So when Jerry did his job as the town manager, identified that the HR situation is a huge risk that needs to be mitigated. The select board decided that that was worthy of looking for pulling in a staff member. A full-time HR person could range between $50,000 to $75,000 a year. On top of that, you have to pay for their vacation, insurance, all of the benefits that go along with being a full-time employee. So you can arrive at what kind of expense that would be. Going the consultant route, it's a $20,000, right, Jerry, $20,000 expense. We have no sick time that we pay, no vacation time that we pay, no benefits that get paid on top of that. When the HR person has come in and identified all the things in the office that need to be in line with state law, at that point going forward, we can utilize that person on an hourly consulting type basis as the need is there. So if you're looking at that situation, Jerry did his job perfectly. The select board said, go find a human resource person, which could have cost the town upwards of $100,000 and put all of those costs involved. He figured out a way to get it done for $20,000. So when we're talking about his raise and whether or not his raise is worth it, there's one example where he more than paid for that raise. Additionally, Josh touched on interest. Jerry changed our accounts into a higher paying interest rate on our fund balance and earned $120,000 this year in interest. Is that correct? I remember right? Okay. So the difference there, again, this man is doing a phenomenal job managing this town. In terms of legal services, this is another one I'm just going to put out in real numbers for you. It's $250 to $300 an hour to contract to hire the lawyer, right? Our agreement with her is $1,250 a month to have her on retainer. We are definitely utilizing our town attorneys more than 5 hours a month. Okay? So if you do the numbers again, this is another way that Jerry has figured out that we will be able to utilize the town attorney as much as we need to at the cost of $5 an hour that we were paying her by the hour. And we are definitely utilizing her services more than 5 hours a month. Thank you.
John.
On a totally different subject, a question for you. Don't we have a motion on the floor that we should vote on?
We have a motion and an amendment.
Okay, so we vote on that after.
We're discussing the amendment now.
I missed the discussion on the amendment, but I've only had half a cup of coffee, so I'm fully doing it today, so.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, just to follow up, on one of the previous speakers' discussion points. The reason, this select board is not going to recognize town wages. Making our town employees, who are doing a really good job here for being here is really important to us. But when, the chief, example being from the budget committee, when they're reading off their grievances against this and their reasons for promoting a amendment, is that wages are increasing 4%. Their amendment does not address the wages in this town. This portion of the budget that we're voting on is only representative of 6 of the employees. So when you're raising concern that you don't think that employees need a 4% or a 3.5% salary adjustment because of the Social Security adjustment, they don't carry that reasoning through the rest of the budget. They're only making that recommendation here in one place. And so it's important for us to take that into consideration, that that's not even addressing those concerns. As for the safety concerns with our tech service, the tech service is very new. We're getting more and more people signed up, and we're communicating with people around what they like to see for text and what they don't want to see for text. So We don't want to inundate people with text messages, because if they receive a million texts from us, it's just like every other million sorts of emails and texts you receive, you'll ignore it. So we're working on a policy of when to text out those services, and that's why we still think it's important to retain. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Michelle Hutchison, Patriot Way. It seems like we're debating a lot between the select board and we're hearing a lot from the select board and the budget committee members. But as someone who is just trying to get up to speed on all this, having read through the book in advance, I want to thank everyone involved in the creation of this budget. I think the tackling of an 18-month budget is a challenge in and of itself. And to be able to come forward with a budget of 3.5% for an 18-month budget is commendable. I don't agree that a 4% increase, regardless of where they fall in the budget, is unreasonable in the time that we're in right now, particularly when, exactly as the chair of the budget committee said, we don't know what's happening and the cost of our stuff coming in over the next year or so. So a 3.5 or 4, depending on how we calculate it with the increase of the paid leave that the town is picking up for their employees. I appreciate you doing that for the employees. I think it's fair to say that most of these folks could go somewhere else and get paid more than they get paid here. So the things that we can do to keep them here is important. I appreciate the work that the town manager has done since he joined us. I think it's been, we've seen the fruits of having that full-time manager here, and I appreciate that, and we want to keep him here. And the idea of mitigating risk as someone who works in the school board, I fully understand the goal is to never have to need to be on the front page of the paper because you had an HR issue or a legal issue that could cost far more than $35,000 between HR and legal services. So I am not in favor of the amendment on the floor, and I am in favor of the select board's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett.
Neil Berry. The budget committee is not trying to tell the select board how to spend money. We're just simply saying, instead of a 14% increase, we propose a 6.4% increase. They can spend the money any way they want to. It's easy to run a town or organization to have a blank checkbook. We're simply saying we're going to limit that checkbook. A couple more things on the big picture. So with our proposal and the current school funding estimate that's in the budget, our proposal would be a 2.9% tax revenue increase. The select board's would be 3.5. With the current school board proposal, it's $150,000 over what we used. It's going to be close to a 5% tax revenue increase. And history says they'll probably get what they want. So you can expect a 5% increase if you go for the select board's budget this line. This is one department. It affects the total budget by less than 1%. So I think it's a reasonable request. And by the way, the use of fund balance is going to go away sooner or later, or simply will be reduced. If we didn't use the fund balance this year to pay down the taxes, our tax increase would be 10%. I think it's 9.8, something like that. It'd be a lot. We're using $740,000 of the fund balance to decrease taxes. Eventually, we can't do that.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
So this isn't a blank checkbook because you are all voting on what our checkbook, total amount that we can spend here is. To the point of the previous speaker, this 1% change, which he's saying is very much, is a lot for a department of this size and for a department that has these needs. And so this is an example of us being asked to change a $6 million budget by $70,000 spread across various departments where we can make choices like, do we decrease paving, do we decrease other services? This is being asked to make it out of a department that has very discrete and measurable objectives and very discrete and measurable responsibilities, and there just frankly isn't that savings in this department. And we don't have the ability to do what we need to do next year at the budget committee's recommended numbers and maintain a safe operation and mitigate the risk. There's a lot of discussion right now about the fund balance, and you you can always say, well, if we didn't have the fund balance, this would be a different budget, and it's correct, if we didn't have the fund balance, we would budget differently, and would have to have a totally different conversation around the expenditures and investments into future capital, and we would budget very differently, but we aren't in a situation where we don't have that fund balance, since we've already collected those dollars from you, we think it's important for us to utilize them as moving forward to help operate with a stable budget. And so I think that it's really important that we reject this amendment because we really do need this dollar amount in this department in order to function as a town and mitigate all of our risks and meet the town needs.
Yes, sir.
Rod Simpson, Emerson Road. I'd like to call a vote.
Well, I think you're the last person who wishes to speak, so I think we're gonna have a vote in. Okay, what you're voting on now is whether to amend Article 5 to read to raise and appropriate $1,065,000 or $1,065,375. And if you're in favor of the amendment of changing the article, please raise your green card. Okay, put them down. If you're not in favor of changing the article, of amending the article, please raise your card. It's clear to me that the motion to amend fails. So what's still on the floor is the.
Can we have a count? To have a, we'll count?
We can do it. Let's you have the counters ready? So I'll ask you if you're in favor of the amendment, if you're in favor of changing the article to read raise and appropriate $1,065,375, please raise your green card and keep it up. And we got the total, what is it?
45.
Okay. I'll now ask you if you are against amending the article and you want to keep the motion the way it was originally, please raise your green card and keep it up.
Got the interesting lunch at the parents' residence.
It always is.
Okay, you put your cards down, thank you. The motion to amend fails by 45 to 63. So we're back to the original motion, which was to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,143,060 for general government. If you're in favor of that, please raise your green card. If you're opposed, I'll put it down. If you're opposed, please raise your green card. That motion passes. Okay, on to Article 6. To see if the town will raise or vote to raise and appropriate $1,055,000 $1,055,920,920 for public safety. Sorry about that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Yes, sir.
Don Perry, Tuesday Road. Many times in the past, whenever we raise money, we've always informed the townspeople as to what we're going to be buying with capital monies. And I would certainly appreciate it. We have, I believe, 3 or 4 articles here today, which this one specifically, it talks about expenditures of what we in the past have called capital improvement. And it's still capital improvement, but we used to identify it in a specific article. So I would really appreciate it if it's identified as to what monies in this particular one, which we're using in the fire department, what are we going to be expending for capital?
Thank you. Mr. Roy, did you want
I
to?
just want to clarify, this budget line does not have capital expenditures, because we moved to a capital plan. Capital expenditures come out of capital improvement plan, so it's not within this budget line.
So it will be, in this particular one, it'll be Article 10.
I think the motion is for department.
I understand. There was 2 different articles here. One was addressing, was Article 6, and there's another one, Article 10. Would Article 10 be the correct one?
Article 10 is related to the population of the capital improvement funds, yes.
Okay, Article 10.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Okay, I'll go to a vote. If you're in favor of voting to raise and appropriate $1,055,920 for public safety, please raise your green card now. Okay, put them down. If you oppose that motion, please put your card up. Okay, the motion passes. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,880,550 for public works. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting whether to raise and appropriate $2,880,550 for public works. If you agree, please raise your green card. Thank you. Please put them down. If you disagree, please raise your green card. Okay, thank you. That motion passes. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,000 for community services. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,000 for community services is passed. If you're in favor of that, please raise your green card. Thank you. Please put them down. If you are not in favor of that, please raise your green card. Thank you. That motion passes. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $805,318 for debt service. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 9 is passed. Is there discussion? Oh. Okay, seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry for a little traffic jam back there.
No problem, please.
John Smith, Patriot Way. On debt service, there's a reduction of 30%. Looking at the chart I saw of our debt, did we have a reduction in our actual debt, or do we still have those obligations? And the reduction we're seeing in our budget is only the timing of our payments?
Mr. Roy.
Yep, I mean, it has to do with the timing of the payments, so some of them are paid twice during this 18-month cycle. Some of them have a payment towards principal twice, but only towards interest once, so it just has to do with the timing.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? this time, seeing none, if you're in favor of raising and appropriating $805,318 for debt service, please raise your green card. Thank you, please put it down. If you're not in favor, please raise your green card. Article 9 passes. Article 10, see if the town will want to raise and appropriate $70,000 for the fire department capital reserve, an existing non-lapsing capital reserve fund for which the select board may expend for the designated purpose of the reserve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, Mr. Bergen.
Alan Carrington, Day Road. Now, I hope it is appropriate. We identify what specific capital improvements will be expended for this particular item. The reason I'm asking this, there have been many times in the past, when we talk about each individual department, we have talked about what additional new equipment is out there, and I just want to be very transparent as to what's going on, and the people in town know exactly what's going on.
Ms. Roy?
I'll defer to the fire chief after making his first comment. So with us having moved to a annual funding of capital reserve accounts, there's the proposed schedule, but that does not mean that that is everything that will be expended, or does not mean that those items will be expended. So we do have proposed things that are coming up this year, but it's not needed to replace because we're getting more lifespan out of a piece of equipment, or there's a technology change that allows us to repair something as opposed to replace it, that provides us with the opportunity. But I do want to defer to these series of questions to the department heads to share what they have proposed for the next 18 months.
Yes, Chief.
I appreciate Alan's segue, because it does matter to the budget people, to the voters, and I appreciate the opportunity. I have identified a 10-year capital improvement plan currently as we sit. As we all know today, those prices are changing, and trying to figure them out is being a little bit more difficult, regardless of which side you're on. So that 1.8 million for 10 years, that becomes 180,000 per year, sort of a level funded. The 270 you see in front of you is 18 months annualized. We're not purchasing anything this year. We're not purchasing anything next year. My next purchase request will be for 2029, a new ambulance, also a rescue, and then keeping the one we have. At that point, our ambulance will be 10 years old. It'll have more than 100,000 miles on it. That's usually when they're replaced. We're starting to actually spend money on that rescue more than the maintenance. Things are breaking and failing. We're also putting money away for rehab. Currently, the ladder is being rehabbed, and that was with ARPA funds. I appreciate that. But our 6 fire trucks are now aging out. They're 15 and a half years old as far as the 6 average goes. So we're putting money away to rehab those things. What the select board chair mentioned hasn't even made public yet, but I'm doing due diligence with replacement. So I'm not trying to spend $1 million ladder truck or $2 million now, $1 million pump. We're trying to rehab. Tuesday, the select board will be informed and given out that the town of Durham just received a $26,000 firehouse sub grant for a new rescue boat. So the town's getting a new rescue boat on a grant, on the backs of Captain Salvi and the town staff putting that together. We just got $16,000 this week in other monetary grants. It's due diligence, but I assure you, everything we can do to put money aside to rehab. Again, the next purchase is in 29. The problem with that is next year I'll need to sign for a rescue, if that's approved, to keep that cost at 2026 cost, because it's a 3-year build for an ambulance. So we have to, even though this money is being collected every year, we're looking out 10 years, we have to sign possibly next year if approved, for a 3-year bill, pumper trucks are 4. So, Alan, does that suffice your questions? I appreciate the segue, because the townspeople should know where it's going.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Rice?
Jane Rice, Bowling Hill. I'm gonna take a deep breath. This year's budget process has been extremely frustrating for me personally. Because I felt like as much as we are trying to be transparent, there are things that are not transparent. I commend every department for having a 10-year lookout. I think that's wonderful. I think that's responsible. Where the disconnect seems to be coming from is the townspeople don't seem to have the right to vote or to know what we're voting on. Today, when they put it up on the screen, was the first time, and I've asked 3 times, it was the first time that it was disclosed that it's a pickup, a flatbed, and a front-end loader that we were purchasing. We used to have something called a CIP group, which was made up by, I believe, townspeople, and the department heads would put in like 5 of their most needed items, and this group would rate it and decide what we were going to purchase. Right now, that's taken out of those hands, and it is now up to the select board, or Jerry or the town. I'm not even sure who's responsible, but it just seems like that has been taken away from the townspeople. I find it very frustrating. I asked her to be as transparent as possible. They said, don't worry, it'll be all put out there. Well, I think one line on that screen is not enough information for me as a taxpayer. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. Ms. Roy?
I just want to actually say thank you, Jane, for advocating so much to get that on the website. I think, it's something that we're all still working at a lot of the transparency issues that we're trying to correct. And Jane advocated relentlessly for the capital improvement plan for each department to be on our website, and that is available on our website at this point. It's right underneath the annual town meeting. You can click on that, you can see the 10-year plan, you can see exactly what's being proposed to be purchased each year and what that amount is. We've also asked that live there permanently, so that at any point in the year, any resident has the ability to go on our website and see exactly what the 10-year plan looks like. And as the department heads update that 10-year plan, that information will also be updated on the website as well. So Jane, thank you for your advocacy. I think it really helped bring that to the forefront and get that information available to the residents.
Is there further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. This is your vote to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $270,000 for the fire department capital reserve. If you agree with that, please raise your green card. Thank you. If you disagree, please raise your green card. Thank you. The motion passes. Moving to Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $305,500 for the Public Works Capital Reserve. This is an existing non-lapsing capital reserve fund from which the select board may expend for the designated purpose of the reserve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we raise and appropriate $305,500. Is there discussion? Ms. Burton, you can speak from there if you wish.
I don't know, I'm kind of astonished by when I initially had said specifically about 3 different articles that were addressing capital improvement. A motion is put on the floor. No more explanation from the person that put the motion on the floor. So therefore, I feel obligated come up here and ask the question again. What is going on with Public Works? If anything, granted, there may be monies going in, but maybe nothing's coming out. Please explain that.
Is there somebody who'd like to address that?
I would defer to
I see a lot of pointing around.
So as you saw, the article that was presented on the screen that was presented shows the pickup truck, the current order, and first half of the second year of this 18-month cycle will be a flatbed truck. So that's been on the website. Last year we were slated to buy a pickup truck. Jerry thought maybe we could, him and I talked about that, we could give him a year out of it. That's why we didn't buy anything last year. That's what's good about the flat funding is that we can get there and decide, maybe we don't need to go ahead, maybe we can go another year. So it works both ways. And it also was helpful if I was to go an engine in a truck that was relatively old, rather than fixing that, and we can justify when we would have a special town meeting and wait till the following year. So it gives us more flexibility, but the 10-year plan dictates what we're going to purchase, and sometimes, as I said, we can put that off.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. This is Article 11. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $305,500 for the Public Works Capital Reserve. If you agree with that, please raise your green cards. Thank you very much. If you disagree with that, please raise your green card. Thank you very much. Article 11 passes. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $15,000 for the Municipal Buildings Capital Reserve, an existing non-lapsing capital reserve fund from which the select board may expend for designated purposes of the reserve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the town raise and appropriate $15,000 for the Municipal Buildings Capital Reserve. Is there discussion?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Alan Currington, Day Road. I'm not objecting to any of these things. I'm just asking, when we're looking at capital reserve, I think it's very proactive. I'm glad to see it. I've always been an advocate of showing us that 10-year plan, and that's what's being done. But sharing the reward of doing things like this is what I'm trying to get across to the townspeople, that this is very positive thing that's going on. So, pat yourself on the back when you're putting this motion in and really push it out there and be, yeah, hooray for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Jill Gaston, Sackville Road. First of all, thank you for letting me stay seated instead of only being able to speak here as the community member because I'm speaking as a resident.
You're welcome.
There's been, I can't think of the proper term, a research group, a committee that's been looking at what to do with our town center, and a lot of conversation of either renovating or building a new town hall. But yet the chart that was presented in the beginning of today and $15,000, I presume we're not proactively saving for that. And so am I correct to assume that if that came to light, it would be a bond issue?
Can anybody answer that? Mr. Roy?
Yeah, so, replacing the town office or building a new town office isn't in the 10-year capital plan. There was a grant opportunity to have a facilitated conversation to receive impact and input from the entire community on what they would like to see done in a downtown center area. Anything that comes out of that is yet to make it to us on the select board and just be needing to be considered based off of what those inputs are, but we're not going to make any assumptions on what that group's recommendations are going to be. And so, since we don't have any plans for replacing or building a new headquarters or town center in 10 years, we're not budgeting for that.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So is it safe to assume, once we get the information, it would be put into a plan to save for it? Or should we be assuming there could be a bond down the road?
I don't think it's safe to assume anything, because we don't know what the recommendation from that committee is. If the recommendation is to create something in the next 20 years, then it would give us ample time to save for it. So I don't think it's safe to assume that we would have a bond for anything, and I don't think it's safe to assume any recommendation on that committee is before we receive it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $15,000 for the municipal buildings capital reserve. If you agree with that, please raise your green card. Thank you very much. If you disagree, please raise your green card. Thank you very much. Article 12 passes. Moving on to Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,152 for the grants matching reserve. This is an existing non-lapsing capital reserve fund from which the select board may expend for the designated purpose of the reserve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 13 be passed. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $3,152 for the grants matching reserve. If you agree, please raise your green card. Please put it down. If you disagree, please raise your green card. Thank you very much. Article 13 passes. Article 14 is to see if the town will vote to reduce the amounts authorized to be raised in taxes in the previous warrant articles by $3,651,770 based on estimates for non-tax municipal revenues. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the town vote to reduce the amounts authorized to be raised in taxes in the previous warrant articles by $3,651,770. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call. Oh, please.
Michelle Richardson, Patriot Way. I was just curious about the other revenue line, and I'm sorry if that got picked up in your presentation earlier. It seems like a pretty large increase from 62 in the current year to 252, I think, over the 18 months. Just curious what makes that up.
Can somebody handle that question? Yes, that's right.
The select board addressed the fee schedule. Oh, sorry, Mark, do you want to answer? Okay. The select board addressed the fee schedule, and that raised the rate that people are paying for permits, and that contributed to the other, right? Am I saying this right? No, I'm not? Oh, it's mostly interest. I'm wrong. It's mostly interest. It's okay in his new account. 120,000 users? Yeah. Glad to hear, Mark.
And so the assumption was that rates would stay consistent over the next 18 months?
It's time. We don't have a crystal ball, so.
Yeah. Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting to see if the town will vote to reduce the amounts authorized to be raised in taxes in the previous warrant articles by $3,651,770. If you agree with this article, please raise your green card. Thank you. If you disagree with this article, please raise your green card. Thank you. Article 14 passes. Article 15 says to see if the town will authorize the select board to appropriate up to $740,000 from the general fund's existing fund balance to reduce the amounts authorized to be raised in taxes in the previous warrant article. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 15 passes. Is there discussion? Yes, Mr. Simon.
Bill Siren, stockholder. I just want to share an opinion. I don't expect it to affect the vote. So it was pointed out at the beginning of the meeting that the town has a very healthy fund balance. That fund balance right now is making interest for the town at a fairly healthy rate. I believe our CDs have been earning 4.5%, but of course will change over time. I'm of the opinion that it's best to let your money make money for you. It's an easy way of earning money. I'm enjoying retirement right now because the money I invested over decades is making enough money to live a nice lifestyle. The town has a very healthy fund balance. If we weren't to touch it, it would keep making us enough money so that many of the expenses that we're voting on, it would pay for those. But instead, we're voting down, to use that fund balance. So eventually, we will have to be raising taxes to pay for the things the town needs and wants. I don't expect the town to change its recommendation for this year by taking out $740,000 out of the fund balance, but how much money could that $740,000 be making for the town? And that is a discussion that rarely came up. There was only one question regarding that asked to the town accountant, who agreed that that certainly is another strategy. Is not touching your money and letting it make you money to cut down on your expenses down the road. So at the risk of being redundant, I apologize. The reason why we're going to vote to use $740,000 from the fund balance is because it's going to keep our taxes out. Now it sounds like will be about a 3.5% to 4% increase. Because if you voted not to use this $740,000 from the fund balance, your taxes would increase, I'm only guessing, by about double. So this is really a band-aid approach where we have money available to make us money, which will help in the long run cut down our expenses. Instead, we're going to use the money right now to cut down the expenses over the next 18 months, but we're looking at a significant raise in taxes for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Roy? Okay, Mr. Roy.
No relation. So one thing I just want to say, Mel has a very good point. In our personal finances, the goal is to build a large principal amount and put it in an account and live off of the interest rate if we're fortunate enough in retirement. Municipal finances function differently. And so in order for us to have an investment that is yielding the $6.5 million for our next 18-month municipal budget, or $12 million for our entire town cost, that principal amount would have to be astonishingly large. And in this situation, 4% interest on $750,000 is $29,000. And so we think that it's important to, rather than come forward and ask you all to give the town money to populate an account that will then be built up into a large principal that can offset the entire cost of running the municipality, which would take decades, or unless everyone put a lot of money up front. It's better to spend down that amount and to help mitigate the annual increase in taxes. Now, one thing I want to make clear is these allocations for future capital, those still remain in our account and they're not taken out of. So when we are putting $270,000 in a capital reserve account, that then goes to make interest for us as well. Those dollars aren't expended spend it until we actually buy a piece of equipment. So we still have interest income from that. And we just feel that it's not appropriate in municipal funding to carry this large balance and ask folks, even though we already have your tax dollars, we want more of your tax dollars to build this account, because it's not really a feasible strategy at the scale of our budget.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, Ms. Reyes.
Jane Rice, Stony Hill. I just wanted a point of interest that it was discussed at the budget meetings that this amount, or if we continue to spend this down, we're on kind of a 5-year plan. So when that money is gone, in 5 years, any increases will not be mitigated or offset by this amount, and it will increase your taxes. So the discussion that came up was, we need to rein in what we're increasing so that when we get to that point, we don't have built-in things in our budget that we can't address at the time that we built it in. And then we're gonna get hit with a huge increase because we have no money to offset. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, John Mason, I think, didn't we get in trouble like 10 years ago, when I remember, if we have too much of a balance in our general fund, and then also if we're not up to date on our current valuations of properties, it also affects state funding coming back, matching for school systems or grants, that kind of stuff. That's what I thought, one of these people were going to answer that question, bring that concern up. So we had to pay down some of our debt from the general fund years ago. I know we kind of forget history, but I can't remember for sure the year that happened. But I just want to know if anybody, all of you have been in public service for a long time, maybe you remember that, recall it. I just want to make sure that that's an issue that we've addressed in the past, so it might affect what we're talking about today.
Can somebody address this question? Yes, please.
Michelle Richardson, I don't believe the municipal statute includes a maximum on their undesignated fund balance, but the school undesignated fund balance does. So it could be back prior to the RSU, if it fell to the town for that. The schools are required to keep a maximum. The statute states it's varied over the years. It was as low as 3%. It was as high as 9% during COVID. It's this upcoming year is 5% of your total budget, and the risk of having more than that in undesignated fund balance, excuse me, is the state has the ability to offset some of your subsidy. So if you have too much in the savings account, they say, well, okay, you don't need subsidy from the state. And so historically, they have not done that. To my understanding, in the 12 years I've been on the board, that has not been some of the lever that they have utilized, but it is in the statute to maintain a maximum undesignated fund balance, obviously significantly less than what the town has recommended at 15 to 25 on the municipal side. For the schools, side, it's 5%.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. Mr. Roy.
I just wanted to address, well, thank you for that answer, but I also just wanted to address the concern about spending down the fund balance and that what happens in 5 years. At the same time, we're spending down debt. So right now, our annual debt expenditure is $805,000. We pay off almost all of that by 2030. So as we're paying off our debt, we're setting aside this capital, which we then will have lower expenses in terms of debt, and that gives us different budgeting opportunities in the future. And so that's why we're comfortable spending this down at the rate which has been recommended, and we work with our town accountant to come up with what is a reasonable amount of money to maintain to help manage cash flow and expenditures like that. And that's why we're very comfortable with this number that the select board and budget committee have agreed upon.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting to see if the town will authorize the select board to appropriate up to $740,000 from the town for the general fund's existing fund balance to reduce the amounts authorized to be raised in taxes in the previous warrant articles. If you agree with this, please raise your green card. Thank you very much for that. If you disagree with this, please raise your green card. Thank you very much. Article 15 passes. Article 16 is to see if the town town will vote to consolidate the telecommunications reserve and Eureka Capital Center Reserve with the Municipal Buildings Capital Reserve, and to revise the stated purpose of the reserve as follows. The Municipal Buildings Reserve shall be used to pay for acquisitions, construction, or improvements of municipal buildings and grounds, including equipment, furniture, information technology, and other necessary items to furnish and equip them. Unexpended balances of the reserve shall not lapse in the fiscal year, but shall instead carry forward from year to year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 16 passes. Is there discussion? Mr. Roy?
Yeah, so the reason this, we're making this recommendation is because the Eureka Center is a municipal building, and so we felt like rather than maintaining two separate reserve accounts, it made more sense to house all municipal buildings under the same reserve account. So the intent is to have those dollars available to work on all of the municipal buildings, including the Eureka Center. And to limit the number of reserve accounts we have.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes.
Jane Rice, we also, can you discuss the telecommunications reserve? Why would you have that in the hospital?
I didn't hear that, Gene.
The telecommunications reserve is being added in also. Can we speak to that, please?
Can someone speak to that? Mr. Roy?
Well, the telecommunication needs are often associated with municipal buildings, so we felt like combining them made sense.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Article 16. You're voting to see if the town will vote to consolidate several reserve accounts. If you're in favor of this, please raise your green card. Please put them down. If you're not in favor of this, please raise your green card. Okay, Article 16 passes. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to rename the emergency reserve as the contingency reserve, and to establish the stated purpose of the reserve as follows. The contingency reserve shall be used to pay for unplanned, unbudgeted, or underbudgeted expenditures if they arise during the fiscal year. Unexpended balances of the reserve shall not lapse at the end of the fiscal year, but shall instead carry forward from year to year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 17 passes. Is there discussion? Yes, please.
Jeffrey Wakeman, will this new contingency fund have the same restrictions as the emergency fund? If I remember correctly, from being on the select board, the emergency fund could only be expended with a vote from the budget committee. Will that remain?
Would somebody like to answer? Mr. Roy?
No.
Ms. Roy?
I just wanted to tell people in case they weren't looking at the numbers, the current balance in the emergency reserve is $16,953.
Thank you. Ms. Rice?
This is one more thing that is moved into an account that the select board has the right to make a decision without a town meeting if I'm not incorrect.
Can somebody address that? Mr. Roy?
Yeah, this will function like all the other reserve accounts, so that is correct.
So that's one more decision taken away from the taxpayer, in my opinion.
Mr. Berry?
Neil Berry, a couple things. Regarding emergency spending, that changed since Mr. Wakeman's comment that the select board had authority over the emergency fund exclusively based on last year's town meeting. That's, I guess, expires this year, so somebody needs to do something about that. I'm not sure about that, but the other thing is that there's not much in the realm of emergencies that the capital funds wouldn't cover. If you need a roof, a new transmission, or something like that, the capital funds will pay for that, and the select board has control over those already. So I don't think there's anything in the emergency world significant that couldn't wait till next town meeting. So I don't see that this needs to happen. And my opinion is, if you get, this is human nature, if you give the select board $50,000 to spend, they'll spend it.
Thank you, Ms. Roy.
I think there are all kinds of things that could be classified as an emergency. There are also things that don't classify as an emergency that funds would need to cover. For example, if people remember back when our previous town manager resigned and we needed to hire a new town manager, that was an $8,000 expense to be able to recruit and hire a new town manager. Our audit this year that was done produced that the budget had a 1%, what's the right word, Mark? Variance, and the recommended amount is, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically you're very thin on.
A very small margin, to be able to utilize, and so this gives the town, the select board, the town manager, the ability to be able to cover any of those types of things that would happen within this 18-month cycle that are not defined by an emergency.
Yes, please.
This seems completely reasonable. It's not a large dollar. They're not looking to put $50,000 into this emergency fund to spend. Could you share how much has been spent since last year when you did have the authority to spend these?
Can somebody answer that?
$0.
None. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Jill Gaston Day, Stockwell Road still. So the $8,000 that was used to hire the new town manager, if I remember correctly, didn't go over their department budget. And in the past, the ones that I do remember going over department budget was the fire department. And when it comes to town meeting, we vote to cover that. So I'm still confused why we need this fund, since we already have procedures in place, either to cover small amounts, or once it's $10,000, it can be paid by capital reserve.
Can somebody alleviate her confusion? Mr. Roy?
We don't think that it's an appropriate measure to say, well, if we just go over, we can ask for forgiveness later. We want to try to be in line with the budget that the town proposes, and this would provide us with a little bit of opportunity to accommodate emergencies. So emergencies could look like a variety of things, but also anyone who's been making purchases over the last couple of weeks have seen fluctuations in expenses, and so if there is a major fluctuation in expense for a need, we want to be able to supplement that a little bit if necessary. And capital improvement and capital reserves are really for capital, for what we've all discussed today, and not to pull from to accommodate for an emergency. And when we have an issue of expense that's been arise and then that department still remains under budget, oftentimes that means it remained under budget at the expense of some other item. So something else was skipped, something else was not done because they had to cover that unexpected expense.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. We're voting to see if the town will rename the emergency reserve as the contingency reserve and establish the stated purpose. If you're agreeing with that, please raise your green card. Thank you. If you're disagreeing with that, please raise your green card. I think it's reasonably close, so I think we should have a conference. Okay, if you agree with Article 17, to see if the town will vote to rename the emergency reserve as the contingency reserve and establish the purpose, please raise your green card and leave it up.
pushing myself on discussions in your household. She beats me. You can see the bruises on me. Be a fly my next life.
Okay. Please put them down. If you disagree with Article 17 and you'd rather not rename the emergency reserve, please raise your green card and hold it up. You can put them down. Okay, the yeas were 59 and the nays were 38, so Article 17 passes. Thank you. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to transfer $33,047 from the municipal buildings capital reserve to the contingency reserve to bring the contingency reserve balance to $50,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that Article 18 is passed. Is there a discussion? Yes, Jason.
So at the budget committee meeting, I was under the understanding that these funds were coming from the telecommunications. Did you assume that that vote would go through, and that's why you're now calling it the municipal buildings capital reserve? That you're pulling it from, or am I incorrect? And this is just, when you said, not a big chunk of money, well, now we're putting 33,000 into it. And once again, this takes the vote away from the taxpayer, so I vote against the decision. I'm not comfortable with that.
Mr. Roy.
Yes, the proposal was to ask the town to combine those and, not raise any money, just reallocate it to an emergency, reserve as a ballot, especially about this week.
Yes, yes.
But it's no longer an emergency reserve, it's contingency reserve, so it can be used also on unbudgeted items, correct?
Mr. Roy.
Yes, we felt like that was important, seeing as we have an 18-month budget. We were within 1% of spending in our last budget cycle, and there's a lot of things that have been popping up recently due to the expenses and costs of doing business for the municipality, that this would be a good way to have money set aside in, with approval from the municipal voters to address those concerns when they arise, rather than running over budget or something like that. And the hope is that we don't have to use any of it, and the plan is not to use any of it unless something arises.
Mr. Simon.
Thank you. A follow-up to Jane's question. If indeed the $33,047 was formerly the funds we had in the telecommunication account, why wasn't it worded that way in this article?
Can anybody answer that? Mr. Roy.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Could you explain a little bit more?
Previously, your question, Mr. Simon.
Previously, Ms. Rice asked if the $33,047 was the amount discussed during the budget committee meeting, that was the money that was in the telecommunications fund that the select board wished to transfer to the, I can't remember what they wanted to transfer to. They wanted to transfer it to the emergency fund. My question is, if this is the $33,047 that was discussed during the budget committee meeting, if this is the $33,047 which was originally in the telecommunications fund, why wasn't it worded, weren't the words telecommunications fund worded in this article?
think Ms. Roy has a good answer.
I don't have, I didn't hear the question, unfortunately.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Mr. Roy?
I did defer, someone was looking for you before I raised my hand.
I think the way the warrants were written is they assume the previous ones are approved, otherwise you would have to amend all of your, so you have to make an assumption one way or the other. Generally, they are passed in the affirmative, so they're written such that, so if this was written and it said telecommunications, well, telecommunications reserve no longer exists because we already voted to consolidate it into the municipal. Same way, not referring to the emergency fund, it's referred to as a contingency. I think the way they write the warrants, that's typically how it's done.
Thank you. Ms. Roy?
So if people want to follow along with my train of thought, I'm on page 19 of the report. We just voted to add telecommunications reserve in the amount of $73,531, as well as Eureka capital reserve in the amount of $48,816 for a total of $123,347 being added to the municipal building capital reserve, which is a total of $193,233. And the current question that we're asking is if you will allow $50,000, no, not true, $33,047 transfer from that $193,233 that we all just compiled together into the contingency reserve.
Ms. Roy?
And just to follow up on that, and what the previous speaker said, that these articles are written on the assumption that the previous article passes, and if that previous article doesn't pass, then there's no need to vote on the subsequent article, because the previous articles are what established the contingency reserve. If that were to have failed, we would not have had the subsequent discussion, but they're built in a way that you can continue the meeting, should they pass or fail.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. If you agree with Article 18, to see if the town will vote to transfer $33,047 from the municipal buildings capital reserve to the contingency reserve, please raise your green card. Please put them down. If you disagree, please raise your green card. It's clear that Article 18 is passed.
Can you call a count, please?
Can you call a count, please?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you call a count, please?
Hang on just a moment. Yeah, sure, we can do a count. Okay, my counters will go down on the floor. Okay, we would like to vote in favor of Article 18, that is to see if the town will vote to transfer $33,047 from the municipal buildings capital reserve to the contingency reserve. Please raise your green card and hold it up. Okay, you put them down. If you oppose Article 18, please raise your green card now and keep them up. vote was 53 in the affirmative to 45 in the negative. So, Article 18 passes. Mr. Simon, for what purpose do you rise?
Just a question based on previous meetings. Just a point of order. Thank you for recognizing me. In the past, we would have two sets of counters, so that, I mean, it looked like right now we have two counters. One counted the bleacher area, one counted the people seated. But in previous meetings, we would have two sets of counters to make sure that those numbers agree. So, for instance, we'd have two people counting the people who were seated, and two people would count the people who were in the bleachers, and then there was a come together to make sure that those numbers were in agreement. I'm just wondering why we didn't do that this year.
That's a fine question. I think either way is permissible. I don't know, I'm not aware of any rule or statute that would require us to do it one way or the other. I think if we're required to do a count, or if we're asked to do a count, I think if we come up with a reasonably reliable method of doing it, I think we're being permissible. Yes, ma'am.
Nancy Swanton, Rabbit Road, and also one of the counties. I've been working with elections for a long time, and I've been here at the town meetings for a bunch of years. I can't remember how many. Anyway, we've done both. There have been a few times when it's two counties, but to be honest, most of the time it's like we've done it today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to Article 19. I'm sorry.
Just my privilege. Can we take a brief 5-minute break? Just allow the town planner to get set up and give people a second to question.
Of course. Let's take a 8-minute break until 11:25.
Please see the ladies auxiliary and Girl Scout cookies out front. Great catch. Is any left?
Have fun? Please find your seats. Okay, I'm calling the meeting back to order. We're going to move on to Article 19. Article 19 reads, shall amendments to the land use ordinances as set forth in the document Town of Durham Land Use Ordinances adopted at town meeting April 6, 2024, proposed revisions for town meeting April 5, 2025, Part 1, draft amendments to Resource Protection District to match the latest state data and give relief for buildings in R2 District, Article 2, and zoning map be enacted. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Did you see who made the motion? Yes. I just wanted to make sure we put it up. It's been moved and seconded that Article 19 is passed. Mr. Severge has been requested to give a brief presentation about these ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. George Swaraj, current serving town planner, and I'm going to be presenting the recommendations of the Planning Board and Conservation Commission Working Group for amendments to the Resource Protection District. So they did a study over the last year and came to the following key findings. The first is that based on recommendations of the 2018 Comprehensive Plan, in 2023, the Resource Protection District was revised to incorporate findings and research from the state provided on natural resources in Durham. And based on that information, the current Resource Protection District boundary was established. Public input during the process leading up to the 2023 amendments indicated concerns over the accuracy of the state data. And then the second concern that came up was the impact on people with existing buildings in resource protection, requiring them for any expansion whatsoever to have to go to either the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board. So, as a result of that public input on the concerns for the accuracy of the state data, Indian Fisheries and Wildlife did a customized analysis of Durham that got much more fine-tuned. A robust study was done and determined that a significant portion of the land, based on one of their criteria, did not actually meet the standards for designation as resource protection. So as Mr. Roy indicated, approximately 1,500 acres of one of the categories of resource protection, beginning with habitat, co-occurrence of natural resources, will be removed through these amendments. In terms of the impact on existing buildings, the working group is recommending that a development buffer be put around those existing buildings in order to allow expansions without having to go to the boards for relief in terms of projects they want to build. So as far as those changes, this map represents the changes to the Resource Protection District. You can see the yellow coloration is the areas that were designated as resource protection that will be removed through these amendments. And then the customized analysis, there were, based on the study, approximately there were 18 buildings in the areas designated based on that state data that will be removed. Those are shown on this slide in purple. And then there were 34 locations where buildings were in resource protection for other reasons. So the working group is recommending that for those other buildings that if they are in a floodplain, that's the reason that they're in resource protection. They would have a 100-foot buffer around those buildings for development purposes, and that would still be subject to federal, state, and local floodplain management requirements for those. If they are in a designated forested wetland area based on the state mapping, similarly, they would be a 100-foot distance from all of their existing buildings that they would be able to expand into
subject to federal and state wetland regulations. The working groups are a different approach for stream buffers and another category that I'll explain. And for those areas, they felt that it was important not to further compromise the buffer of that more sensitive natural resource, and so they are recommending that the boundary be pulled off those buildings and that they be allowed to expand as long as they go no closer to the resource. And then finally, the fourth category is the same thing, certain important waterfowl breeding habitat areas. There's only a couple of these in the whole town where there's a building intruding into that 250-foot buffer. So again, similarly, they would be able to expand that building in the yellow there as long as they don't go any further into the buffer. So with those changes, that will remove the areas formerly designated beginning with habitat 6+ for occurrence, and it will also remove those buildings from RP subject to those specific buffers, which will all be shown on the zoning map.
Thank you. Is there other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Jill Gastonguay, Stackpole Road, were any, I see things were removed, was anything added?
Can anybody answer that question?
No, nothing was added.
Is that gonna occur next year?
There's no plans to add anything.
Is there further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting on Article 19, whether to make amendments to the land use ordinance regarding the Resource Protection District. If you favor this article, please raise your green card. Thank you, put them down. If you do not favor this article, please raise your green card. Thank you. Article 19 passes. Article 20. Read, shall amendments to the land use ordinance as set forth in the document Town of Durham Land Use Ordinance as adopted at town meeting April 6, 2024. Proposed revisions for town meeting April 5th, 2025. Part 2. Draft amendments to apply contract zoning to any large battery energy storage or solar energy system and enact best, I think that should read best standards. LUO Articles 2, 3, 5, and 19 be enacted. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that Article 20 is passed. Would somebody like to make an amendment? Would I like to move an amendment to change best to best?
Point of clarification, it should read BESS.
Okay.
Which is an abbreviation for battery energy storage systems.
My error. So no amendments necessary. So it's been moved and seconded that Article 20 should pass. Is there any discussion? Mr. Burke?
Yes, I've been asked by the select board to present some background information for the voters to understand this complicated issue. So the recommendations for amendments to the land use ordinance are coming from the planning board as well as the select board after their review of these issues. And this was kind of precipitated. These are the kind of key findings that we put together just to summarize how the town got to this point. The town of Durham, 2 years ago, approved a utility scale battery energy storage system, 5 acres, 175 megawatts next to a CMP substation in an industrial park. And Durham has received inquiries about doing a similar facility here in this community, even larger. So as a result, the town attorney advised the select board that that application actually meets the definition of an essential service and would be a permitted use anywhere in Durham other than in the Resource Protection District. So the other problem, and even Durham had this problem, is that they had no standards for this particular developing very intensive use technology. And as permitted, the only standards that the planning board could apply apply to one of these facilities if they were proposed for Durham would be the site plan review standards, which are completely silent on this particular development form. Based on experiences in other states, particularly New York, research we looked at indicated that there are significant fire safety, noise, and environmental concerns associated with these systems. And as I said, the ordinance in Durham currently has no standards to apply to address those issues. So based on these facts, the select board called for a special meeting back in November, and the town did enact a 6-month moratorium to allow us to try to put together these regulations, which the planning board had already been working on, and so we were in a good position to move fairly rapidly and put this together based on a lot of the research that we were able to look at. So since that time, the planning board and the select board have been working with the staff to put together these draft amendments consisting of proposed standards for battery energy storage systems as well as contract zoning. So the draft standards for battery energy storage systems coming from the planning board review, they recommend that the town establish a 3-tier system, arranging everything from someone has an electric vehicle and they have solar panels on their roof, and they just have one of these battery energy storage systems in their garage. That would be a tier 1, and that would be small scale, residential, and business. If someone has a business that has a high energy use, they would be in that first tier as well. And then you have the medium scale, which is a project that went in Cumberland, where they have an office building, fairly large, and they have a solar field, and if they have battery energy storage system to support their needs, that might go up to tier 2. And tier 3 would be like the Durham 5-acre, 175 megawatt classification. So all of the BESS systems, whether they be the Tesla in the garage or the battery energy storage system like the one in Durham, they would have to meet all of the latest safety standards for start to finish. The connections to the power line, the internal connections within the system, the monitoring, the alarms, the suppression, fire suppression. There are new standards, and even for the individual batteries that we're storing, there are all kinds of standards that are referenced in the ordinance, so the planning board and code officer and other town staff will have the needed standards to apply. The proposed amendments will allow tier 1 home applications to be approved just by the code officer with an electrical permit, but all of those safety standards will be applied even to that level. Tier 2 and Tier 3 would have to go through a planning board site plan review process, which will focus primarily on screening, noise control, and emergency access. And then if the project gets up to the size of a Tier 3, it would require industrial scale. That would be, the fire chief gave a lot of good input on this. They're concerned not just having a water source for fire protection, but having redundant supply so that if the wind is blowing in a certain direction, they can have multiple points to get water from to deal with an emergency. And also having what they call an emergency operations plan, where immediately, if they monitor any type of a problem within the facility, it shuts down as much as possible internally, but the emergency personnel are notified, and experts from the operator are brought in to help them deal with some of those special issues. And then finally, visual impacts are a concern for any of these types of developments, and so this follows work that we did with the solar farms, and we require extensive screening where there are visual impacts, and would also make them provide for eventual decommissioning of the project if necessary. So the other part of this, select board worked with the town attorney, who suggested and recommended that the town consider contract zoning for these large-scale energy projects. And as I said, Durham, it was in an industrial park location, so it was not particularly controversial. But in the case of Green, and this isn't the one in Green, but a similar scale, the town of Green had a proposal to build a 600-acre
solar farm. And that just sent the town into spin of, you know, how do we deal with this? So the Conservation Commission had been working on doing an analysis to determine where large solar farms, where it was appropriate and inappropriate. And so the town attorney suggested that contract zoning is authorized under state law. It just says, look, once you set a certain threshold, any project would have to go to town meeting for approval for the contract zoning amendment. So that's what the select board is recommending. And the basic framework for that would be that any large-scale energy storage system proposed anywhere is currently a permitted use, anywhere along those two power lines, and this would change. And as I said, the Conservation Commission had been exploring suitable locations for large-scale solar systems, and this would address that as well. Both forms of development do have potential benefits for the community, both in terms of facilitating alternative energy sources, as well as potential tax benefits to the town, but at the same time, they also can have a significant impact on rural character and environmental quality that will be addressed through these amendments. Contract zoning is that mechanism to consider these on a case-by-case basis where those factors can all be evaluated and then brought to a town meeting to decide if this project is in the best interest of the town. And in those proposals, there's a process outlined in the ordinance amendments for the negotiation of that, review by the planning board and the select board, and then the presentation at the town meeting for an up or down vote. Draft amendments will require that any BESS system with a capacity of more than 1 megawatt, and that is about one of those shipping container sized project components. Anything more than that would have to go to a town meeting, and after a lot of public discussion and input, the select board eventually arrived at any solar farm of 20 acres or more would also have to go through that contract amendment process. And those are amendments in summary.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion of this article? Yes, sir.
Terry Mooney, Old Brunswick Road, dump road to people that have been in town for a while. So we're on the cusp of joining getting the benefits of solar power, whichever side of the issue you fall on that. I'm glad that it will be left to a town meeting. It's a relatively new technology, and I would just want to bring up the point that I think fire protection and the potential for fire is a significant issue with these, especially in the Conex-sized containers that store the batteries. The batteries are primarily lithium, and lithium is a Class D fire. And most suppression systems, including inerting systems and clean agent systems, are not UL listed or FM approved to extinguish a Class D fire. And a Class D fire with lithium batteries is extremely dangerous and can propagate very, very quickly. Of course, if you put enough water on any type of fire, it will eventually be extinguished. But you would need an extraordinary amount of water to extinguish a significant Class D fire. There are chemical agents available. There are Class D fire extinguishers, and I believe the NFPA codes provide considerable guidance in addressing this type of fire. And I hope that the town fathers and the fire department, of course, will insist that the NFPA codes that are not adopted by every jurisdiction for these solar projects be rigorously enforced. We're going to put that type of a hazard within the boundaries of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cassidy.
Are the NFP standards being required?
Is that the question?
That's one of them.
Who would choose to answer that? Mr. Roy?
If this ordinance was adopted, it would provide the town the opportunity to apply those standards, whereas without an adoption of this ordinance, it would not give us that opportunity.
Okay. And is the wording such that they have to keep up to date and compliant, not just the year they got the permit, but every year they need to be making upgrades as we learn more things about this?
Mr. Roy?
If this ordinance is adopted, all of those criteria will be developed by the select board, the planning board, and ultimately the town, via a town vote, and that is something that could be required during that process.
That's only if it hits contract.
Correct. Otherwise, then I would refer to the basic safety standards that we have built into the ordinance as well.
Okay, so for the minor ones, are they being required to meet the latest and greatest fire standards?
Mr. Verge can answer. Excuse me.
Yes, the draft amendments include a requirement that the systems, and again, the home application is a whole different animal than these large utility scale where most of those fire problems have happened. So for the larger systems, they are required to do an annual inspection by an engineer to test all of the systems and make sure that they're following those requirements. So every year it will be monitored and if the standards change, they'll have to meet those standards.
Thank you.
Would the Gorham project have fallen under contract if it was done in Durham?
Yes.
Okay. And is cleanup being considered as well? Because if there is a fire, there's a lot of chemicals that get into the ground and into the water source.
Mr. Verge, can you answer?
That would be covered under the requirements for the emergency operations plan. It deals with everything from initial notifications to dealing with the emergency and then in the aftermath as well. That's all spelled out in the draft amendments in terms of the process.
Thank you.
And as we learn new things about this, I know with the larger projects, they have evacuation that's required. With the smaller projects, as we learn new information, are they gonna have to be in the standards of evacuation as well? And is the select board gonna take that into consideration when you think about that there's daycares and things like that that could be in the area of these buses?
Would someone care to answer? Mr. Verge?
Again, that would all be covered under the emergency operations plan. So any developer of this facility will have to work closely with the fire chief and the fire department to look at all of these issues in terms of evacuation, contingencies, alarms, and also addressing, and part of the benefit of contract zoning is obviously one of the things driving this is the limited capacities compared to Durham or Portland or some of those larger municipalities. So and under contract zoning, anything over one of those containers, if there are certain equipment, service needs of the fire department, that can be a requirement negotiated through the contract zoning process. And if they do not provide the resources to the satisfaction of the fire chief, the select board, planning board, and ultimately town meeting, they would not be able to build a facility in Durham.
Thank you. Mr. Roy?
And another thing to add, in relation to like the location of a project with concerns around daycares or things like that, under the current proposed ordinance, it would give the town the authority to reject a project simply based off of its location in the town, feeling that that's not an appropriate location for it. Whereas if you did not have the contract zoning, if someone met the minimum safety standards and the minimum construction criteria, the planning board would not have the ability to reject them purely because they don't want that project sited near a particular resource. So this would give not only the planning board and the select board that ability to negotiate, but ultimately the town to approve. Without it, they could put it wherever as long as they met the construction standards.
Yes, ma'am.
Jess Costa, Brianna Drive. I'm in support of adopting the best standards because if a best project were to be approved in our town, the standards would help minimize safety issues associated with this type of development specifically. The same safety issues don't necessarily apply to solar projects, I want to point out. And I'm also in favor of having a permitting approval framework like contract zoning for development in Durham. And I understand gas and solar projects are a priority right now as there has been expressed interest by developers in our town. However, I think other large development types like gravel pits for mineral extraction should also be included under contract zoning in the future. And I think gravel pits have a much greater impact on the environment and are a much greater source of disturbances such as noise to the public than these other types of projects we're talking about today. So I hope next year at town meeting you're voting to add gravel pits and other large developments, like maybe even potentially certain subdivisions that wouldn't qualify as affordable housing because of the cost of the houses end up selling at. I'd like to see these added to contract zoning. If we're gonna have any type of development under contract zoning, we should have all large development under contract zoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Claire Ross, Oak Ridge Road. And first of all, I really think we should recognize our attorney's foresight in picking up on this and developing this whole process. I know many people worked on it, and very, very pleased to see that. So I want to say thank you to that. We do have, what, one more month left in the moratorium, I believe, it's 6 months, so 6 months from November. Is there an extension possible in the moratorium? Is it another 6 months, I believe? Okay, and what I was looking at, and I appreciate your presentation on that, certainly. As an uninitiated person, I was reading through Part 2 on the contract zoning, Section B, the application process, number 3, in line 13, which is, I'm not sure how it resonates in the town report. It's a notification to abutters to any proposed battery or solar storage system. I'm just waiting for people to find it. It's
Ma'am, can you give your reference again?
Yes, please. And I apologize for not addressing you.
Oh, no,
Mr. Moderator.
You're doing fine.
It's Part 2, contract zoning, Section B, the application process. And it's number 3, which is notification of the butters. And then in line 13, I'm sorry to do this, but to be this detailed, but I think it's important. I don't waste your time. Notification of the butters, any proposed battery or solar storage system is 500 feet. I'm asking, and I don't know what the customary distance is, but my observation of Durham is that we have a lot of properties with significant frontage, and how many people would be directly notified as abutters? Yes, they'd be abutters, but should that distance be a greater distance to notify more people close to the development site, considering the risks and consequences involved in the character of the neighborhood? So I would ask for a larger notification requirement. The setback is line 13. The setback is 100 feet, is what I understand, if I'm correct. So you're looking at a 100-foot setback, add to that 500 feet of notification. You could potentially be within 2 football fields of a battery storage system with your home. And if the majority of the town decided that it was tax advantage and so forth, and you were in the minority, this is what would happen if it was voted in. There'd be any other requirements, but I just urging caution, potentially, I don't know what the process is, Mr. Monitor, if this can be amended to a greater distance, if it requires going back to the whole process that we've done to date for the land use.
It can't be amended at town meeting.
That's what I suspected.
What would have to happen if you're concerned about elements of it is that you would vote against it. And if it fails, the select board and the town planner would kind of have to go back to the ground zero and work on developing it again.
Okay.
It's important.
I want to honor the work that's been done. I'm not here to throw a monkey wrench in it.
No.
I just want more protection for citizens.
Yeah. We can't amend ordinance articles because the wording is super important because those become the town statute.
Correct.
So the way to do it is if you disagree with something that's contained in the proposed ordinance, you will vote against it, and if it fails, they kind of have to go back to the drawing.
So, Mr. Moderator, is there someone who could answer what the process might be if we did make a change to this? Would the process be including an extended moratorium in order to get that work done and then brought before the town?
I'll let George motion you to the technical part of that, and then I have something I'd like to add afterwards.
Thank you.
In terms of the distance for notification of the butters, that came from the town attorney. Based on, it's pretty much a standard across all of Maine and zoning that you have a notification of direct butters, but this would be required beyond that to any property within 500 feet. So it's not, if you have a 20-acre facility and they are located on the back of 10 acres, the entire property, anything within 500 feet of that property boundary would have to be notified. And just recognize that these are the people that are going to be most impacted, potentially, but the entire town is going to be impacted. And that's why it's going to be going through a fairly extensive and very broadly publicized process of the town meeting contract zoning proposal. So I think that the 500 feet is you know, again, coming from the town attorney, that's a standard. But also in terms of changes, as with any ordinance, you know, if you want to make modifications to it, once it's in place, you can do that. We're making modifications on the solar by putting that into contract zoning this year from the amendments that were approved last year. So I don't think it needs to affect the process that you're in order to make changes in the future.
Thank you very much. Sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the thing I wanted to add to that is that I appreciate your comment and I recognize your concern. I think not passing the ordinance puts the town at much more risk than passing the ordinance with perhaps a buffer that maybe people don't feel is satisfactory. And I'd just like to point out that when we passed the resource protection last year, we went through the process. Was it last year or the year before? Last year, last year. And then when new data and lots of town feedback came to the select board about the fact that the co-occurrence 6+ model didn't represent what the majority of the town wanted. We addressed that and we made those changes at this town meeting. So putting in passing this ordinance, even though that perhaps that buffer might not be what the town considers big enough, it's better to get this in place and protect us now, and then be able to go back and revisit if we want to extend that to a greater buffer, versus not passing this and having nothing in place until we get to the next town meeting.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Friendly, runner on the road. I guess I would say I'm in favor of the best ordinance, and I understand why you might want to require contract zoning for the best ordinance because of the real risk of fires and chemical spills that people have talked to at this point. However, I don't think solar should be included in contract zoning. And I say that for a few reasons. One, solar would have real benefits to our tax infrastructure. There's an installation going on in Farmington that they estimate would generate $700,000 in local taxes, which would make a huge impact on our budgetary issues. Solar is safe. There are no risks of chemical spills. There are no risks of fires. It's very quiet. It's been around for decades. We should be doing everything we can to encourage solar development in our town. I think people are concerned about visual impacts, but I would point to the fact that the solar ordinance that passed last year has visual impact regulations in it and large buffers that would protect the rural appearance of the town. So I don't think that's a real issue. I think there are other ways to control siting aside from contract zoning. As pointed out, the Conservation Commission has been looking into that, and I think we should pursue that. But I think it's a mistake to link solar and BESS, because they have very different risks and very different benefits for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Yes, sir.
Jeff DeMille on Cushing Road. I agree with pretty much everything that Mr. Franklin said, but I would just like to know if you could clarify if we pass this amendment, but decided to take the solar aspect of it out at a later meeting. Can that be done easily, or and at in what time frame? Like if solar, the best I agree with, and the solar should, I don't go with that for the contract.
It is possible, it's permissible, to pass a warrant article and then request at some future time that it be amended. I would expect that, you know, if the select board decides that it is meritorious, if they want to amend it, it would probably happen at the next town meeting or maybe a special town meeting. Did you want to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna add to what the moderator, copy what the moderator said in regards to that. I don't know if I would use the word difficult versus not difficult. That's entirely dependent on what the purview of the voters in the municipality are. But the process itself would be either a special town meeting or a normal town meeting where that can be brought up prior to as a recommendation. And so the select board will be open to hearing all recommendations on anything we talk about today after this meeting.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted clarification. I assumed town meeting approval would be the April town meeting, but now hearing special, I just would like clarification.
I don't know what you're asking.
Under the contract zoning, would it be the town meeting that is held annually, currently in April, actually now it'll be what, June? Or would we be holding a special town meeting?
Mr. Roy.
My understanding is the ordinance as proposed would allow for either of those. It would be determined to be a town meeting. So if the select board came to the recommendation that we want a special town meeting, we could put out that through all the notification process that's required, or wait for the process to come out of the next town meeting.
Okay. I would like you guys to lean towards waiting for the annual town meeting because you at least get 5% of the town population, whereas when you do it as a special town meeting, you tend to only get about 1%, I think, of the town. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Roy.
Yeah, that's a really great recommendation. You know, if you, throughout the rest of the ordinance, you'll see that during even the proposal process, there's a public hearing that is, would be an even better time to bring up if people wanted something to wait until a regular town meeting, or if someone wanted to suggest that the select board consider a special town meeting. Our board is very aware of the difference in attendance, and the intent of this ordinance is to give the voters the biggest say. And without speaking for the entire board, I would imagine that we would want to facilitate a process that we expected to get the largest response from the town voters.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Moderator, John Talbot, 636 Stackpole Road, Chairman of the Planning Board. And I was against this. You go back and you look at the TV in October, November, I was not in favor of battery energy storage for some of the reasons that were here. But what convinced me over time to support this was a couple of things. One is the great work Mr. Tavares did, the fire chief did, and looking at things like safety. And also a realization that as we sit today, if somebody came in with 1,000-acre or 600-acre, guy from Green decided to move to Durham or wanted to put in battery energy storage, there's not much we could do. The planning board's hands would be fairly tied into turning that down. And with the combination of contract zoning and battery energy storage, I think we will get, if it's approved by the town, and the town at the end of the day has the right to say yea or nay. And there's also an extensive process that includes a public hearing, a public notification that this is going through. So it's a much stronger position the town will be in after this is approved, and I am in fact now, after many months, in favor of this.
Thank you. Mr. Roy.
And I just wanted to echo what Mr. Talbot just said. What was really important to us when we're thinking about this and developing it through the hard work of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, the town attorney, town planner, fire chief, and I don't think there was anyone who didn't touch this during the process of developing it. What was really important to us was that giving that authority to the municipality and giving the authority to the municipality in a way where they could leverage the most benefit out of a proposed project should one make it to our town. And with this process, not only would there be a very forward-facing process that involves lots of public hearings, a butter notification, it would also give the opportunity for the municipality to ask for certain elements that the municipality normally can't ask for when a project's being considered. So it can ask for a plan to address water supply, should that be a concern, or address an apparatus that may need to be purchased in order to provide public safety, or makes recommendations or requirements that access roads be much more robust than they would be required for other development. So because of that, because of all the work of the planning board, that's why we came to a proposed ordinance that the select board and the planning board are both really comfortable with.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, sir.
Rich George. I just want to know why the solar component was added. I understand the BESS component and why there's such a need for this ordinance. I'm just curious as to why the solar was lumped in, because they are completely different.
Mr. Roy?
That's a really good question. Initially, the recommendation was to include a 10-acre development profile for solar, and we got feedback from the Conservation Commission and others that 20 acres is really the minimum that should be considered for that. The reason we were considering it is just due to the size of the development and impact compared to other land uses in town. So there aren't a lot of other land uses that are proposed currently that have an immediate 20-acre or larger impact. Our subdivision with the clearing usually is less than that. There's very few 20-acre pits being proposed or going in, and so we felt that in order to help maintain the rural characteristic, is that 20-acre impact threshold warranted additional siting tools, not due to a safety component or safety concern, but due to just a siting concern. Because we understand they're totally separate in terms of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but you can mitigate the cosmetics of a solar farm. The main issue, I think, with BESS are the safety factors of it. But so I think the main reason we have this ordinance you're asking for is for safety.
So to lump those two together just seems a little bit unfair.
Yeah, I understand, but we were also concerned about the siting. So right now, we receive a lot of diverse impact of opinions from folks as to where things should go. We have a very robust buffer standard, but right now, as it's proposed, there's no siting tool to limit large development in really important agricultural lands or areas that are high traffic or things like that. And so while the Conservation Commission and others will develop a siting tool through the next year or so, we felt that it was better to just park this in there for the siting reasons, not for the safety reasons, and then take into consideration further proposals when there's more time to develop those.
Appreciate that.
Ms. Roy?
Just to add something else to that question and comment, correct me if I'm wrong, that at that threshold, that reaches a commercial level versus community or individual. And so at that point, the select board is also considering the potential financial gain that could happen to the town if it were at a commercial level, and what we would be able to leverage to be able to get the resources that we would need in order to work with that size development. And so we felt like we wanted to include it at that size because of the commercial potential impact and the investment that could happen for the town at that level.
I think that's great. I just think it should be separated. I think the best is a completely different organism that causes things that are triggered. I think that ordinance, what you're speaking of, should actually just be implied or actually added to our overall ordinances, so you have that leverage and control. But these two things are very separate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Terry Mooney, Old Brunswick Road. Again, I understand the enthusiasm of folks for solar power. But the ordinance, we're really focusing our concern, rightly so, on large projects. 20 or more acres of land is a significant amount of land, and I do believe that it will have possibly an impact on the rural character of the town. Also, as solar technology increases, to make solar power viable, we want the solar farms to be able to supply energy when the sun doesn't shine. In order to do that, they need these battery storage units in the large solar projects. So again, giving the residents of the town of Durham a little more say in such an impactful project, I don't think you can have one without the other, especially in an industrial application. A home, a business that has some solar panels on the roof, absolutely, let it go for it. But when you see something that is going to take a significant amount of land away from any other use, and you're going to put these battery storage systems in there in order for them to produce sun or supply power to the grid when the sun is not shining, you have to have both components. We can't parse that out. I think looking at the project as a whole and getting that consideration from the citizens of the town to do what we feel is best for our community is the way to go. And I like the amendment the way it's been presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Mark Durham, Stackpole Road. Just want to give my little input here. I absolutely think we need contract zoning. I absolutely think that we need good best standards. I even agree that large scale solar systems, 20 acres or more, probably should be including contract zoning. My issue, I just want to point out, kind of echo Mr. George a little bit. These are all related, but they're all separate. And I think that by combining them into one warrant article and trying to force the vote on all three things that are separate issues is disingenuous. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just Costa, Brianna Drive. I just want to make an important clarification that you don't need battery energy storage to have a solar project. Solar doesn't need a large For example, the project that's in, Unity, Maine, that doesn't have an associated large, VEST system. So I just wanted to make that important clarification. Solar does not have the same, safety concerns as battery energy storage, and the two are not linked together. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brian Lama, Bradford Road. I'm a member of the planning board. I'm in favor of the best standards as well as contract zoning. I think they're both very valuable tools. But I agree that with Mr. Durham, that I don't think that they should be together. I would have preferred that they would have been two separate warrants. And agree with Ms. Costa's comment that there are many other uses that could fall under contract zoning. I think it's going to be a great tool once we have it. And my question, Mr. Moderator, is the select board acknowledged that there's a month left, maybe a month left on the moratorium, and that it could be extended another 6 months. But if this fails today, will the board extend the moratorium?
And would somebody care to answer, Mr. Tucker or Mr. Roy?
I can't speak for the entire board, especially because as of in today's meeting, you'll get a different makeup of the board. But I would imagine that we would always put the town's interest in terms of protecting development in front of us for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? See, yes, Mr. Roy.
Yeah, just one thing I do want to note is that we held a lot of public hearings on this and had a very large information outreach component and encouraged a lot of input. The reason we have the 20-acre threshold for the solar is because that's the feedback we got at the last meeting up until we had all this developed. So we went from a 10-acre threshold to a 20-acre threshold to already put in some of that public feedback. And I just want to let you know this was taken into consideration the feedback that we did receive when we had those public hearings and those information sessions.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, we'll call a vote. You're voting on Article 20. Shall amendments to the land use ordinance as set forth in the document, Town of Durham Land Use Ordinance as adopted at town meeting April 6, 2024. Proposed revisions for town meeting April 5th, 2025, Part 2. Draft amendments to apply contract zoning to any large battery energy storage or solar energy system and enact best standards, LUO Articles 2, 3, 5, and 19 be enacted. If you favor this article, please raise your green card. Please put them down. If you do not favor this article, please raise your green card. Okay, it's clearly Article 20 is passed. Article 21. Shall amendments to the land use ordinance as set forth in the document Town of Durham Land Use Ordinance as adopted at town meeting April 6, 2024. Proposed revisions for town meeting April 5th, 2025, Part 4. Draft amendments to revise the process and standards for projects involving historic properties. LUO Articles 5, 12, and 19 be enacted. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 21 is taken up. Is there any discussion? Mr. Barr?
Once again, I've been asked at the select board to make a short presentation on the draft amendments for historic preservation. These are coming at the recommendation of the town attorney, as well as the select board after a fairly extensive process of review. Just to give a little bit of background information, the town currently has one official historic district. Within that district, which is the Southwest Bend District, there are 3 buildings out of 33 buildings that are actually officially designated as historic in terms of the preservation requirements. There are 5 other properties scattered across town: Shiloh Temple, the Friends, the West Durham Methodist Church, and there are 2, the Bliss House and Osgood House on Royalsboro Road.
And under the current ordinance, any project within 1,500 feet of any of those 8 properties is technically required to go through a review for potential impacts on these historic properties. And the town attorney is really concerned that yellow circle up there, 1,500 feet around any of those properties, is basically creating a de facto historic preservation district without going through the process called out for in the ordinance. So that was one of the proposed changes that we're reviewing. And as I said, any project for any construction within a quarter of a mile of any of those has to be reviewed, whether there was anything historic involved or not. And the other concern is that the town put this in place back in 2005, and there's no clear record of the reviews that were done to justify the designation of the historic district or any review in terms of the very detailed historical preservation, technical analysis. And so the town lacked documentation if any of these projects were challenged in court. The town attorney believes that the town's position would be very compromised in terms of defending any enforcement decision. As a result of that, the recommendation of the select board under advice from the town attorney and the town planner is to eliminate that 1,500-foot de facto district, to repeal the current Southwest End district that does not meet the documentation requirements for a historic district, to instead focus the regulations on the official, recognized, documented historic properties, those 8, and the select board, as a result of the full participation process, included the properties surrounding those, would also be considered in terms of the process of development on those properties. The town attorney has also provided the draft amendments that will revise the standards and procedures to follow federal and state requirements for historic preservation programs. And the select board retained the historic commission, but reconstituted it from a regulatory board like the planning board or board of appeals to an advisory capacity, and their review for any project, either on those 8 properties or the properties abutting them, would require an advisory opinion from the historic commission reviewing the historic standards and potential impacts and making recommendations to either the code officer if it's a building permit, or to the planning board if it's a commercial project or a subdivision. They would be required to consider those recommendations. And these changes, in summary, will streamline the review process for the property owners, and the program still goes beyond what most towns do in terms of protecting historic resources. Thank you very much. Is there further discussion? Yes.
Royal Hollow Road. The chair of the Historic District Commission could not be present today and asked me to read a statement on behalf of the Historic District Commission.
Please do.
We, the Historic District Commission, as fellow residents of Durham that care about our history and heritage, do not support adopting the newly proposed ordinances for Article 12 and 5.14. Removing the protections of the historic district without assessment puts the town's heritage at risk. We believe appropriate updates need to be made to the code, but due diligence in the form of a formal historic survey should be completed before these ordinance changes. The commission, the town lawyer, and the town planner have all expressed the need for a more detailed evaluation of properties for historic significance by qualified experts. For this reason, we advise the town to vote against the proposal until a formal historic survey is conducted of the town. With hasty action, we run the risk of losing Durham's historic character. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Wendy Case. I live on 735 Royal Road across from the historical church. I've admired it for many years, and after looking at about 50 homes from Yarmouth to Wiscasset, I found my home. It's exactly what I want. I love what it looks like. I love what it stands for. I'm proud to be part of the historical district. I bought it in 2014 and started fostering children in order to find my daughter. I was told that I couldn't have a pool. I couldn't have a pool because I was 1,000 feet from the historical church. Well, the pool's going in the backyard. So no one can't have it because it could be seen. So one summer day I went and I stood on the porch of the historical church and my lilacs and my open field, the cherry tree, you couldn't see the pool. I put it up, obviously. Right? I mean, come on, I bought the house, it's mine. I'm a single woman who's looking to start my life in a town where I don't really want to live anywhere else but Durham, except for maybe in the winter, Florida, right? Stood in the parking lot of the church. You couldn't see the pool. So at the time, the code official says, look, give me $25, you fill out the thing, you know, put your pool, but you gotta take it down in the winter. Okay. So for 11 years, I've taken that pool down. Started out about $300 to fill that pool with water. Last year I paid $650. What's going on? Modern changes, modern life. It's a pool. I didn't paint my door paint or add a farmer's porch to a home built in 1880. That's all I got.
Thank you very much.
See you Monday.
It's down.
All right.
It's for standby.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Abigail Blake, Ferry Road, which is not Southwest Atlanta. Did you say earlier that there were 8 buildings that are currently designated as historic?
Can you answer that, Mr. Burke?
Okay, in order to be subject to the requirements of section 5.14, building would either have to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places or determined by a qualified historic preservationist to be eligible for listing. So it meets any of those, either of those classifications that will be subject to the regulations. Currently, for the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, we have documentation that there are 8 structures, 5 of which are listed and 3 of which are eligible for listing.
Do we know if the bandstand is part of that listing? The bandstand is not listed as a historical building. So does that mean that if we vote to pass these and lift these regulations, the town can decide to do whatever they want with the bandstand?
Mr. Roy.
Yeah, I can answer that, and it's a timely question because we just asked the town.
It is.
If we wanted to expend funds, and fun fact, one of our select board members looked it up, the same exact question of what to do with the bandstand was on the 1933 or 1933 town warrant. So this has been a conversation we've been having for a long time. If this, as it's put now, the town can modify the bandstand, the town could remove the bandstand if it was a human hazard. This wouldn't change that if it was enacted the same sort of approach for that. It would not, it's not considered a historic building at this time. And if I misspoke on any of that, Mr. Barnes, please feel to jump in.
So the current historic district regulations would require, if there's any changes to the bandstand, that it be approved by the historic commission? Yes?
Yeah, and the proposed changes here would then still have that be approved by the historic commission.
As an advisory
As an
commission?
advisory commission to the, depending on the change either to the code enforcement officer who's issuing the permit, or if it's a planning board issued permit to have an advisory there. Currently, they have to take that into, they can take the historic district commission's input into consideration. This legislation would require, or this ordinance would require those staff to take the advisory commission's recommendation, and there is a process to evaluate if the advisory commission, which in this case would be the historic commission, disagrees with what the code enforcement planning board has put in place.
So is there any connection between the bandstand's current state as it's in the historical district and the timing of this proposal to lift historical district standards?
No, the fate of the bandstand and the historic district commissioner distinct issues that we're trying to address separately.
But related because they're in the historic district?
Regardless of the historic district status, we still recognize that the bandstand is an important historic component of the town, and that's why we're asking for the feedback to work on it. So this change would not make it so one way or the other would be easier to modify or harder to modify the bandstand.
It doesn't sound that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it would make it easier or harder. It sounds like we're lifting the regulations, so there's really nothing standing in the way of the town doing what it wants to the bandstand.
I think Ms. Roy would like to address that.
There's just one point of clarification that I'd like to add, and it addresses what you've already stated, that the bandstand is not one of the 8 properties. So something was said in error, George, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you just stated that if this goes into effect, it wouldn't impact the bandstand. It would in fact impact the bandstand because the bandstand is not one of the 8 properties. I just want that to be clear.
Thank you for that, that's my point. Thank you.
I do agree with what he's saying, though, that these things are not timed up. I know that it may seem that way.
It does seem that way.
It does. This has actually been before the Historic District Commission for 3, maybe 4 years, and that was before the bandstand conversation. So I also want to be very transparent about that these two things are not timed up and related. This ordinance change has been in the work for multiple years.
Mr. Roy.
Is there anyone who can provide clarification on the status of the bandstand in modifications currently with the Historic District Commission? Because my understanding is that Historic District did not impact the ability to make modifications to the bandstand as written now. So my understanding is that that doesn't change going forward. I don't know if George can provide some clarification.
I'll try. As I indicated, there are officially 8 structures within Durham that qualify either for listing or are in fact listed. The bandstand is not one of those. Under the current regulations, if any work were to be done on that structure, either demolition, modification, replacement, then it would have to get a permit from the Historic District Commission. If the code officer, I think currently it's delegated, makes a determination that it is a contributing structure. And the problem is right now, there are no criteria for making that determination. This is one of the things that this town attorney and I keep focusing on. We have no documentation to determine, is it eligible for listing? The Maine Department of Transportation did a study. The 1003, I think, is the Ferry Road right on the corner. That's officially designated as eligible for listing. The bandstand, they reviewed every structure along there and did not determine that it met the criteria for designation as a historic property subject to protection under the federal act for those things, for federal highway funding. So someone at some point looked at it and determined that it did not meet the criteria for listing on the National Register. But in the current district, there is this clause of a contributing structure, and probably if they voted on it in 1933, it would be classified as a contributing structure. So now, it would currently require a certificate of appropriateness by the Historical District Commission. If these amendments go forward, depending on what the nature of the project is, if the planning board has to review it because it's a non-residential structure, then the being abutting 1003 Ferry Road would trigger that the Historic Commission would have to invoke the advisory opinion for the planning board to consider if that project goes forward. So it's a little, depending on the specifics of the situation, but currently it would probably qualify, but nobody's determined it as a contributing structure, but it would be very hard to have that hold up in court without
change to this ordinance.
And I just have a point of clarification to ask on something that Mr. Tavares just said. So if the reviewing authority, in this case, the code enforcement officer, were to say, well, when this was evaluated, it wasn't considered historic, so it's not a historic or contributing structure, then it would not have that advisory letter from the historic district.
Yeah, and again, you have to understand, this is related to property rights, impacts on property rights. If the town will exercise regulatory police authority over activities on either private or public property, you have to have a legal basis for doing that. And unfortunately, the current ordinance is so outdated and not particularly well designed for Durham. The town attorney is very concerned that it would be very hard to defend a decision in either direction if it ever went to court. That's what we're trying to address through these amendments.
And so to address the previous speaker's point about the structure itself, right now it is in the air or undetermined as to whether that would need a historic district commission letter of appropriateness at its current rate.
And currently, the code officer makes that call without any training or understanding of these technical requirements.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Paul Urban, 30 Hollow Road. I've been on the Historic District Commission for the last 10 years. Just a little bit of history on the bandstand. When the flagpole went up, I think everybody probably, it was about 5 years ago, the bandstand was considered a contributing structure. We did go through the certificate of appropriateness, so the flagpoles and I think the walkway could be put in. So I think if you go ahead and don't approve this, then the bandstand could end up in the hands of the planning board, and they can do whatever they want, or the codes officer. If we keep what we have, it has, I see it as past history contributing, and Historic District Commission would then have to approve what happens to it before the codes officer and the planning board control it. As I understood, the town attorney said the historic district was legal because when it was established in 2005, it was established legal. I sat at the meeting and she said that, and I think it was misheard later on. And perhaps we could not do this, vote against this today and bring it up again next year. The commission's been working on those amendments for the last 3 years. The planning board and the town planner kind of got involved in the last year and just did as they saw fit. So I, as a member of the Historic District Commission, would ask everyone to please vote this down.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Rowe.
I just want to take a moment to say we appreciate the Historic District Commission's contributions over the last few years on these amendments. And at the beginning of this process, the select board received those recommendations from them. We received recommendations from town staff, and then we received recommendations from the town lawyer. The challenge is just because we have a desired amendment put forward by one of either the town staff or the town board or commission does not mean that it's legally enforceable. And so when the lawyer reviewed the recommendations made by both the town staff and by the town board, the current Durham Historic District Commission, we had to combine the two of them, removing language that would make it not a legally enforceable ordinance. And so what you're seeing in front of us took those things into consideration, but it's still designed to provide protection while still being appropriate in the letter of the state and federal law.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. You're voting on Article 21, which governs whether amendments to the land use ordinance shall be made regarding to revise the process and standards for projects involving historic properties in accordance with LUO Article 5, 12, and 19. If you approve this article, please raise your green cards. Thank you, put them down. If you do not approve this article, please raise your green cards. The approvals outnumber the non-approvals, this article passes. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to accept a deed from the Durham Cemetery Association for the cemetery property described in the deed from said association according to the Androscoggin County Registry of Deeds as book 7532, page 346, and depicted on the town's maps as map 006, lot CEM, and to take all other actions necessary to assume contracts and other responsibilities related to the care and management of said cemetery. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 22 is approved. Mr. Perry.
Neil Durham, I have a question that doesn't directly relate to this article, but may affect our votes on the upcoming articles.
Well, that doesn't relate, that relates to upcoming articles in general.
Potentially,
Yeah.
So the question is this, and I'm asking because my understanding, warrant articles authority expire at the next annual town meeting, like items, for example. So last year, we had an article that authorized the select board to spend money in reserve fund. And we didn't have that this year, which leaves two reserve funds, recreation and revaluation, I guess unaddressed, if you will. So maybe the town manager knows the answer is, I thought that needed to be reviewed every year.
So point of order, we have a motion for Article 22 that's up for discussion right now.
Well, I'll ask it at the end of the meeting if that's what's necessary. I still have the same question.
I'm having a hard time hearing. Did you ask a question and did you get an answer?
I did not get an answer.
Did
The
you ask
question
a
was
question?
about reserve articles, and we already have a motion.
Who's speaking? I can't see.
I made a point of order that the question is about reserve accounts, and we currently have a motion to accept Article 22, it's not pertaining to the subject matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna rule the question out of order because we're talking about a cemetery right
Okay, can I ask it another time?
now. Yes,
And when?
when we get to the article that covers that.
Well, there is not.
There isn't one, isn't it? He says there isn't one.
Oh, all right. Then I think your question is out of order. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're talking about Article 22. Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to speak on Article 22?
Yes, please.
Please do.
Can you hear me fine? Yes. I am Rachel House, 1015 Howell Road. I am secretary of the Durham Cemetery Association. I just wanted to explain to the town that it is a very hard decision that we have this article now for the town. We worked very hard for many years. It's a family thing for me. We took over the committee from my mother when she passed in 2006. We've worked hard to remain a committee to keep the association going. We're all getting up there in age. We don't have new people coming forward to learn the ropes of the president, and there's a lot to it to keep this going. Our funds are dwindling, and that's the biggest reason we would really like, that's hard to say, but for the town to take this on for us. We do have veterans in that cemetery. So I'm just wanted to give a little more information on that cemetery and why we have this article before the town.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your work on the cemetery. Is there further discussion? Okay. You're voting on Article 22 to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to accept the deed for the Durham Cemetery Association for this cemetery. If you favor this article, please raise your green cards. Thank you. Put it down. If you do not favor this article, please raise your green cards. Terrific, thank you. Article 22 is passed. Article 23, see if the town will vote to change the annual town meeting from the first Saturday in April to the second Saturday in June, starting with June 13th, 2026. Do we have a motion?
May I make a motion to accept the rest of the business articles as one?
You may. Do we have a second to that motion? I'll do this by unanimous consent. Does anybody object to doing the remainder of the business articles with one vote? I'll read through each one of them, and then we'll have one vote at the end. Does anybody object? Seeing none, I'll launch into that. So Article 23 is to see if the town will vote to change the annual town meeting from the first Saturday in April to the second Saturday of June, starting with June 13, 2026. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to seek, accept, and disperse grant funds from private, state, or federal agencies for the purpose so designated in each specific grant. Article 25, to see what action the town will take in regard to fixing interest on delinquent taxes and establishing a date for interest to start. Interest shall begin to accrue on all unpaid taxes 45 days after the date taxes are committed. The interest rate on delinquent taxes shall be the maximum allowable by state law. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to dispose of town-owned property which they determine is no longer needed or usable by the town, on such terms as they deem advisable. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to sell and/or dispose of any property acquired by tax liens in their discretion, as permitted by law, and to allow the select board to authorize the treasurer to waive automatic lien foreclosures when it is in the best interest of the town. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to set the interest rate to be paid by the town on overpayment of abated taxes at 2% pursuant to 36 MRS section 506A. Article 29, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector or treasurer to accept prepayment of taxes not yet due or assessed and to pay interest thereon at an interest rate of 0% pursuant to 36 MRS section 506. Article 30, to see if the town will authorize the select board to resolve any disputes with parties having interest adverse to that of the town which do not involve the expenditure of public funds, or where there are sufficient funds in budgeted accounts to allow payment of any claim which is to be settled. Article 31, to see if the town will authorize the select board to move up to 5% of budget lines that have unexpended appropriations to other budget lines, as they deem necessary to avoid individual budget lines being overexpended. So that's Articles 23 through 31. Is there discussion about any of those? Well, actually, no, we need a, would someone care to move those articles?
So moved.
Would someone care to second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Articles 23 through 31 be taken up. Yes, ma'am.
Jill Gaston Days, Jackpole Road. My concern is with the second Saturday in June. That is when graduation is usually held, and it also tends to be Father's Day weekend. So you're really asking for a very low voter turnout if you elect to do it then.
Thank you. Yes.
Just a point of clarification, Father's Day weekend is usually the third, is usually the third Sunday, so it most often falls not on Father's Day.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ms. Roy.
Could the chair of the school board tell us when graduation is typically held? Please.
Could give me a second to find it. Father's Day weekend is the second weekend this year.
Father's Day weekend is the second weekend this year?
It is.
It's the fourth, okay. I believe graduation this year is.
First weekend.
It's June 8th.
It's 8th, right, so that's the second Saturday. Sunday. Oh, right, it's Sunday, right. So this year, if it was this year, if we were having a meeting this year, they would fall on the same weekend. Oh, no, they wouldn't. This year they wouldn't, because it would be the 7th, which would be the first Saturday, but that's only because I think it could create a conflict.
Also depending on when we start before or after Labor Day.
Thank you. Mr. Roy?
And then, just second clarification here, so Father's Day weekend is always celebrated the third Sunday in June. It just happens to be that this year it is celebrated on the, I think, 14th, which happens to be the third Sunday, but it has to do with how the dates fall, but generally, we're not going to be doing the third Sunday.
We're also never going to be doing town meeting on Sunday. Sunday is Father's Day, and graduation is also held on Sunday. Town meeting will be held on Saturday. And it's scheduled this way to align with the school budget vote, and that way we don't have to have an additional, the cost of 2 votes, right? So like right now, we have the cost of town meeting being held, and then we also have the cost of the school board referendum. And when we put both of those things together, we do that at one time.
So the budget, so the town municipal elections would occur on that Tuesday prior?
Yeah, it would be the same time as, the schools.
Okay. My other question about this is around the election of the officials that currently have slots that expire before that date. What's the plan for that?
Would someone like to address that?
That's good.
Could Jessica please answer that question?
Town clerk can address that.
I'm sorry, so I've gotten guidance from the Municipal Association of Lawyers, and they said when that occurs, the term just goes until the next election.
Okay. Thank you.
And then also add that we can bifurcate town meeting, so the elections and town meeting have to occur within 14 days of each other.
So the plan is the election would be on Tuesday, town meeting would be the following Saturday?
Yes, so if you consider moving town meeting, it has to be within 14 days of the election.
Either before or after, probably after. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? We're voting on Articles 23 through 31. If you approve these articles, please raise your green card. Thank you. Please put them down. If you do not approve all of these articles, please raise your green card. Thank you. All these articles are passed. Do I have another motion from the select board?
Motion to adjourn.
Is that seconded? That motion is not debatable, so we'll move promptly to a vote. Everybody who wants to adjourn the meeting, please raise your green cards. Everybody who doesn't want to adjourn the meeting,